On today's show, comedians Will Durst, Joe DeRosa, and Jackie the Joke Man Martling. Comedy writer Dave Cyrus, Down with Tyranny's Howie Klein. And we're starting a new segment called Civics with Savasco. We learn how Congress actually works with Congressman Ted Lieu's Chief of Staff, Mark Savasco. It's 3 a.m. on Tuesday, November 20th, 2018. I'm David Feldman. We have a lot of shows, so let's get right to it.
This is the David Feldman Radio Network.
Welcome to the broadcast. I'm David Feldman, davidfeldmanshow.com. Friend me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and the holiday season is around our necks, so why not do all your Amazon shopping via the David Feldman Show website? We get a small percentage of everything you purchase. It doesn't cost you any more money. Go to the David Feldman Show website, davidfeldmanshow.com. You'll see a couple of Amazon banners. Click on them and shop away. We get a small percentage of everything you purchase. You can donate money to keep the lights on here. Go to the donate page, become a monthly subscriber to gain access to all our premium content. And while you're over at the David Feldman Show website, please sign up for my newsletter and hit the contact button and tell me what's on your mind.
The David Feldman radio program is made possible by listeners like you. You sad, pathetic humps.
You know, Ron Chernow, he's the historian. He wrote Washington, has a new biography about Ulysses S. Grant. He wrote that big book about Hamilton, upon which the play, the musical, was based. Well, the White House Correspondents' Dinner announced on Monday that he's going to be the entertainment. Ron Chernow, the historian, is going to be the entertainment next year at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Give me a break. Everyone knows Ron Chernow isn't funny. It takes 633 pages before the first laugh. Screw him. That guy couldn't ad-lib a queef at an all-you-can-eat Sister of Sappho buffet. Ron Chernow isn't funny. Just another excuse not to hire another woman for the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Samantha Bee would have been great next year. So they've decided to replace the comedian with a historian. Maybe they can start replacing White House correspondents with actual correspondents instead of professional wrestlers. And if Ron Chernow is such a great historian, he should try making history by closing his performance at the White House Correspondents' Dinner with even Sarah Huckabee Sanders' brisket farts are lies. Because it's not just comedians who must speak the truth, Ron Chernow. It's the historians as well. You're not up for the job. This is a job for Michelle Wolf. It shouldn't be us barely literate, self-loathing comedians who openly challenge this administration. It should be the Washington insiders, and especially the White House correspondents. Do your job. It's pure cowardice to go with a historian. Historians are there to calm the waters, putting times of crisis into perspective, and offering up crap like, America has been divided before. We'll survive this hiccup too. Hiccup. We'll survive this hiccup too. 620,000 Americans died during the civil hiccup. 37 million people died during World Hiccup 1. How many people died because Ronald Reagan ignored the AIDS hiccup? This is not a hiccup. This is a constitutional crisis. We don't need to put it into perspective. There's a time and a place for historians. We don't need them at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. We need real journalists who are covering the White House, which, in case you didn't notice, is at war with the First Amendment. We don't need to hear some tweety guy with patches on his elbow talking about John Adams and Woodrow Wilson silencing the press. I don't want to hear about the Pentagon Papers. I don't want perspective. I don't want to be told to calm down because eventually American history corrects itself. Millions and millions of people die and suffer before American history corrects itself. I don't want to hear that. It's the job of White House correspondents to tell us what is happening now. Hiring a historian like Ron Chernow for the White House Correspondents' Dinner, it's pure chicken shit. I don't want to hear about the genius of our founding fathers who gave us all the tools we'll ever need to fix the mess we're in. That's religious hogwash, blind faith in fictitious white men whose holy writ is even more irrelevant right now than the Bible. See the Electoral College, women and African American suffrage, or the Second Amendment. And even more importantly, when it comes to the Constitution, let's remember that nothing good ever came out of Philadelphia, as in Bill Cosby, cheesesteak, and Mario Lanza. If Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Donald Trump don't want to show up, then they don't show up. Good. I'm sure Ron Chernow is very interesting, especially if you're trying to impress your date. But he doesn't belong at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Also, Hamilton sucks. Never read it, never saw the play, but I know it sucks because it's a huge hit on Broadway, so it has to suck, because New York City sucks. Want to know what it smells like underneath Donald Trump's comb-over? Ride the Q train at 4 a.m.
The David Feldman radio program is made possible by listeners like you. You sad, pathetic humps.
The Oregonian calls Will Durst a hilarious stand-up journalist. He is one of my comedy heroes. I saw him playing Berkeley back in the 80s at a club called Pizzuto's.
Pizzuto's?
Pizzuto's with Rob Becker.
You're just making stuff up.
You and Rob Becker.
Pizzuto's.
Defending the caveman, Rob Becker.
Yeah. Yeah, man worth almost $100 million.
Seriously?
Yeah.
From Togo's?
Togo's, and he sold Defending the Caveman to a theater alliance in Iceland. So all those, wherever you see Defending the Caveman being done in community theater, a little one-man show, or in Vegas, or that's owned by the ICE, he sold the whole thing.
Let me tell you about our friend Rob Becker, who we started with back in San Francisco at the Holy City.
Middle 80s, early 80s.
He was sitting at home one night, and David Letterman called him and said, I just saw you on Evening at the Improv. Come do my show. I think that's the only time Letterman ever called anybody and said, come do my show. Here's something about Rob Becker, and I invited him to do my show, but he didn't know what he wanted to talk about. I think he's if he's got $100 million, he's doing the right thing.
Not doing your show?
Not doing my show. Yeah. I don't think
he might be the second richest comic after Seinfeld.
Yeah. Let me just get depressed for a second.
I was wondering what that look on your face was.
$100 million.
It was like you had just swallowed some sort of really hot, tasty pepper that was dipped in
1994-95, Defending the Caveman comes to New York City.
Oh, yeah?
I was playing Caroline's, and Rob says to me, can you come to the opening? I said, I can't. He says, well, can you come to the after party? Sure. I knew that he was making a fortune before he came to the Helen Hayes Theater here in New York City. So I wasn't really rooting for the guy. I'm young, competitive. I want him to fail because we started together. I don't really mean that.
Yeah, you do.
A little. Yeah. It's not funny if I'm a sweet guy trying to root for my friend.
Where?
I don't remember.
Restaurant near the Helen Hayes.
Yes.
And so it wasn't in a lobby of the Helen Hayes?
No, it was a fancy party. And it was like something out of All About Eve. And I'm standing there, and they're waiting for the Bulldog edition of the newspapers to come out to read the reviews. This is 1995, 94, when people waited for the newspapers to come off the truck to read the reviews. And Clive Barnes from the New York Post Headline, review. This caveman is stupid.
Wow.
And I'm standing next to Rob Becker.
Wow.
And my knees buckle. And I realize, you know what? As much as I enjoy people's
pain and
but
misery.
now I'm getting
No.
And then the reviews were really bad.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but somebody said the reviews were bad, and the wife of one of the critics went to the show, and the husband wrote a scathing review, and the wife said, "No, I liked it," and so she wrote a review in response to her husband.
Wow.
Yeah, and that got printed. And then John Gray got involved, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus guy. Yeah, and I think that's how it took off. I heard that story. I don't know if it's apocryphal or if it's true.
Well, God bless him, because I could not have survived that night, and it became the longest-running one-man show on Broadway.
Yeah.
He surpassed Whoopi, everybody's one-man show, with the bad reviews. So
yeah, Shecky Green. Shecky Green's one-man show.
Persistence. Anyway, so I saw you at Pizzuto's, and this is the joke that I remember thinking, I want to be this guy when I heard you tell this joke. Dianne Feinstein was the mayor of San Francisco, and she had just come out against gun control. This was the 80s. And Will
If it
said,
weren't for gun control, she'd still be a supervisor. Oh, come on, because the audience would groan. Come on. I was on Twinkies when I wrote that joke. Because that was a famous Twinkie defense. That
If you want to understand that joke, go back and look up George Moscone, Harvey Milk, Dan White, and I promise you'll go down a rabbit hole of yucks.
Yeah. She'd still be a supervisor.
That was such a great joke.
And one night, I still had that joke in my repertoire, and I'm doing some fancy gig. And a friend of mine who owned Tosca Theater on Columbus.
In San Francisco.
In San Francisco, she said, Gina Moscone's in the audience. 'Cause she sounded just like Mitzi Shore. Gina Moscone's in the audience. I don't think you should do that, Joe. And she saved me from huge embarrassment. Because the widow of the mayor who was shot by Dan White before he shot Harvey Milk.
Right.
And that's the famous Dan. Never mind. We've over-explained.
Well, Dan White was the supervisor, and we got to quote Rudy Reber's joke.
Oh, which is?
Oh, Larry Brown loved this joke. Dan White was the supervisor who shot and killed all these politicians.
And then got off on the Twinkie defense.
He got off on the Twinkie defense. They rioted in the Castro.
Yeah, as well they should have.
Yeah. He had, low blood sugar that day, and that's why...
I have no idea how he got off on that.
So he was a homophobe. He killed Harvey Milk, who was the most...
Yeah, he was just a blue-collar guy. This was, 78, and homophobia was still something that blue-collar guys, clung to. I mean, it was the whole locker room.
Right.
Make fun of people who are less than. And Dan White resigned his seat in response, and then he asked for it back. And they said no. Moscone said, no, I'm not going to give you your seat back. And he blamed Moscone and then Harvey Milk, and that's why he killed him.
Right. And I'm setting up Rudy Reber's joke.
Yeah, what is it? It's a funny joke.
Oh, it's horrible. You got to know that Dan White, Twinkie defense guy, was a homophobe.
Yeah.
And he ended up killing himself.
After getting out of prison.
Right. And he killed himself by turning the car engine on in the garage. And he died from carbon monoxide poisoning. And Rudy Reber said, how ironic that Dan White should die sucking on a pipe. Because he was a homophobe. And I remember Larry Brown and I thought that was the funniest joke in the world. I consider Will Durst.
Hose? Wouldn't Hose be funnier?
Maybe I'm not doing the joke justice. The same way the killer of Harvey Milk was not done justice.
There you go. You snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. Yeah, no matter how tight the dental opening.
I consider Will Durst the premier political satirist in the country for two reasons. Randy Credico is going to prison, and Barry Crimmins is dead.
That's very funny.
Barry is laughing.
Yeah.
I know Barry's laughing at that.
Yeah, that's also you missed Jim Morris. I don't know whatever happened to him. Jimmy Tingle.
Yeah. Did he get elected lieutenant governor of Massachusetts? He didn't.
No, but it wasn't a runaway. It was within 12 points, you know, which isn't bad for a comedian.
Right.
Yeah.
He went to the Harvard School of Government like 10 years ago. He graduated from the Harvard School of Government.
Good for him.
Yeah. And Jim Morris, one of the great impersonators.
Yes. Got famous for his Reagan impression. And then afterwards, he did a halfway decent G.H.W. Bush, but there wasn't the same calling because Dana Carvey sucked all the oxygen out of that room. Yeah.
But Jim Morris did the funniest joke ever in Europe.
What?
Yep. Reagan was planting short-range nuclear missiles in, I think, Camiso, somewhere in Western Europe. There were 500,000 Greens protesting in Berlin. Ronald Reagan's decision to plant these short-range... No nukes. And he was the definitive Ronald Reagan impersonator. And in front of 500,000 people, the host goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Ronald Reagan." Boo! 500,000 people are booing Jim as Ronald.
In Berlin?
In Berlin. And when the boos finally die down, he goes, "Well, you people are un-American." And the place erupted with cheers. Yes, we are.
That's funny. I didn't know that.
Hey, so we're over at the Playroom Theater, where people...
And it's right here. It's Times Square adjacent. It's right next to the TGI Fridays and the Havana Central. So on the 8th floor. It's a gorgeous little space, isn't it?
Yeah, 151 West 46th Street. There's the physics show that they do here. You should go to thatphysicshow.com and find out what else is going on over here at the Playroom Theater, where you just finished up.
I finished up a 2-week run.
What is the name of your new one-man show? You have so many.
Worst Case Scenario Midterm Madness. That was the final version of it, the final iteration, because the midterms are over.
Can you stand a compliment? Because I just watched it. I just saw it.
Yeah. You stayed for the whole 80 minutes.
Not a piece of fat on the bone.
But I whittled it down. I mean,
so great, so well written, so well
16
performed.
months whittling it
so
down.
many arrows in your quiver. Amazing.
A lot of jokes. You really got to see it twice to get all the jokes.
Yes, and informative, and inspirational. Are Americans taking Trump too seriously? Because I watched you tonight. I have never seen you so angry. You said in the show that you used to skewer
both sides. Yeah,
skewer both sides. You called Trump an asshole. You literally called him an asshole.
But he is.
Yeah,
and the audience gets into it.
Yeah. Are you
lock him up? See how quick that happened.
How genuinely mad are you of Trump? Because I am not mad at Trump. I'm mad at the people who enable him, like the Democrats.
No, he's trying to ruin America. He has no respect for tradition or anything. No, I'm pissed at him. Yeah.
You don't blame Kelly and Mattis and all the people who...
All the enablers?
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's the main one. He doesn't listen to him. He does whatever he wants.
McConnell, George Herbert Walker Bush, George W. Bush, Cheney, Clinton, all the gray eminences of our culture, Washington, D.C. not saying, wait, this has to stop.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, if I'm this pissed, what about Obama? What about, his legacy being torn? I mean, this guy is shredding American tradition. And I mean, we didn't realize, what halcyon days George W. Bush and Dick Cheney were, the Cheney administration. We don't realize, and this guy. And what are they doing? What are they doing? What is Obama doing? He made a deal with Netflix, for Christ's sake. That's his response. Yeah, so I'm pissed at everybody. I'm pissed at everybody.
Well, to Obama's
I don't
credit,
care anymore.
Obama campaigned. He went out on the stump and campaigned against him in the midterms.
They should be setting his toes on fire, is what they should be doing.
But it's the responsibility.
They should be calling in favors from Mark Burnett, from anybody who's got dirt on this guy, and they should be releasing it on a daily basis. They should do whatever you can. You fight, lie, cheat, steal, just like he does.
Well, so far, is he as bad as W?
Yeah.
W was pretty bad.
It's coarsening. Yeah. W had a tradition,
But that tradition was used to
but
get
this
us.
coarsening of America, allowing people to yell at kids and people of a different color or different sexual, they just feel free, and they're just the assholization of America.
Well, the aesthetic is bad, but the facts on the ground. I'm not defending Trump, but W, by now, the World Trade Center had come down within 2 years of his presidency.
No, the first year.
I'm just saying, we were on
The first year.
I know.
Yeah.
We were on our way into Iraq, and
he personally, George W., was personally in deep shit September of 2001 because the whole Kenny Boy, that was the Enron thing was happening, and his approval rating was way down, just like Trump's was.
Yeah.
And then 9/11 happened, and then you had a rally behind the president, and that lasted for 4 years. That lasted until Katrina, and by that time, everybody kind of was done with him, and he was done with Cheney. So that was interesting. Yeah, he tried to be his own man for his last couple of years.
you say you're the canary in the coal mine.
I do.
You're the premier political satirist.
No, I'm not the
You
premier.
are.
I'm the guy who writes his own material, though.
Yeah.
I am that guy.
Yes. I was going to insult you and go, that's obvious.
No, I'm not saying that those guys, I mean, that's a tough gig in itself, seeing that material the third or fourth time and doing it in front of a national audience. Mm-hmm. That's a certain skill, too. Also relying on the writers and working with them and stuff.
Well, they give the job of political satirist on television specifically to performers who are not political satirists. That tends to be the case with television. The networks will never give the job of political satirist to someone who really cares about politics. And I think Bill Maher grew into a political satirist, but I think originally he was just trying to find a way in to get on the Tonight Show by any means necessary. And he was interested in politics, but that wasn't his calling card until Politically Incorrect. And the same applies to Dennis Miller and Jon Stewart. Colbert's an amazing guy. He's a true political satirist, with or without writers. Same applies to Bill Maher. Bill Maher grew into a political satirist with gravitas. But for the most part, they're not going to put a real political satirist on television.
Huh.
You need to take somebody young and groom them so they will toe the party line.
I was young at one time.
Well, yeah, but you weren't going to toe the party line.
But I hit both sides.
I don't think there's much of a difference between Trump and Bush. And I think Bush is more dangerous than Trump. And what you said during your show is all Trump did was lift the rock up and show us what's underneath the Republican Party.
He's ruining the Republican Party. No, he just lifted the rock they were hiding under.
Yeah. It's always been there.
Yeah. The racist, sexist, the kowtowing to the rich. That's always been their party. And then they suck up to the God people. And that's mostly with the abortions because they don't care about abortions.
And if you go
they
back,
don't care about poor women.
Yeah. If you go back 14 years to 2004, Bush and Cheney were running for re-election. And what got people to the polls was this constitutional amendment to ban gay marriage. Now, I'm not saying Trump isn't inciting gay bashing and shooting up synagogues. He most certainly is. But we're not living the way we were 14 years ago. We were at war illegally. They were manipulating.
Still at war. Still get troops in Iraq.
Yeah, but if you don't pay attention to it, we're not.
Yeah, you're right. It is kind of a back burner thing.
Terror code and the way
the color code.
They would scare us before an election. Do you remember that?
What was it? Yeah, they would do that too. Yeah.
I mean, think about that.
Like Trump did. They always do that.
These midterms were pretty tame.
Except for the immigrant thing, which apparently is one. You'll take immigrant invasion over terrorist invasion?
Anytime. I'll take the caravan over Bush and Cheney warning of imminent terror.
Our threat level was burgundy.
I mean, that was pretty horrible what they did.
Huh?
I mean, a lot worse than the caravan.
I don't know if it was worse than the caravan. I think it's raising the threat level for the national security. It was just them convincing the right people that their focus should be on something that had nothing to do with them, against their better self-interests. That's all. It was the same thing.
Not defending Trump.
Yeah, you are.
Well, let's move on. You never stop. You write a nationally syndicated column, books, radio and television commentaries. The New York Times calls you possibly the best.
They said that in 1987.
They said that in 1987.
Yeah.
They also said Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. Fox News has called you a great political satirist.
That was my last show here, the All-American Sport of Bipartisan Bashing. I did that in 2007 at the end of the second Bush reign of error.
And you got high praise from the Fox News Network.
Yeah, it's only because I went on their little show.
Well, that means a lot. I mean, that's where Jesse Waters and Greg Gutfeld are considered the reincarnation of Dorothy Parker and Robert Benchley. So that's
the show I was on. I was on Red Eye, but I was also on Fox News Radio.
Yeah,
I did a lot. They say stuff like that, to make them look good, not to make me look good.
Your writing has appeared in Esquire, the San Francisco Chronicle, National Lampoon, the New York Times. George, did you meet John F. Kennedy Jr.?
I was that close. Because it was the Republican convention in San Diego. He was my editor, and I was covering it for George.
That was his magazine?
Yeah, it was his magazine, John. And he's coming in, and he's shaking hands, and the Secret Service is there. And he's shaking hands before he's about to go off to the event inside the zoo at the San Diego Zoo. So he's shaking hands, and the Secret Service guy sees me standing there, and I'm wearing jeans and a sport coat, and I look like this, pretty much. I'm not wearing the suits and stuff. And he sees me, and he stands right in front. It's my boss. I'm writing for George Magazine, and he won't let me shake hands. The Secret Service just stands right in front, and I'm reaching my hand around, and John doesn't see it. But that was the event where I went to the bathroom and crossed trails with Norman Mailer.
Wow.
Yeah.
You peed next to...
I peed. No, we actually crossed trails. Because Norman Mailer was drunk.
Was he drunk? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
National Lampoon, you've been nominated for 5 Emmys. You've been fired by the PBS 3 times.
PBS, sense of humor, not a match. The board goes back.
And you, for the PBS, have covered unions and the working man. You have always been...
There was a show in the Bay Area. It started in the Bay Area. And then it became California Working, and then it was up and down the state, all the PBS stations. And then it became We Do the Work, and that was nationally syndicated. And then we did another show called Livelihood, and that was nationally syndicated. And we did about 4 years of Livelihood, doing 4 shows a year.
I'm going to ask you a tough question, because I've known you since 1982.
Yeah, 36 years.
Yeah. You come from a union background. I don't know what your father did, but I know that
He was a machinist.
you grew up in Wisconsin.
I'm a third-generation factory rat. My grandpa, my dad, I, a couple of aunts and uncles, some cousins, my mom and my stepmom all worked at a tractor factory called Alice Chalmers.
And you grew up in a union hall.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, my dad was a steward. Yeah.
And you have a background in respecting the union.
Yeah. Why?
I'm going to ask you a tough question. Is it my imagination during the Reagan years, I kind of remember you softening a little on unions?
No, I just don't believe in patronage jobs. I think also a union only kept me from getting a job in AFTRA. They never helped me get a job. But I understand, and people are finding out now the power of a union only when they're missing it.
Right.
You know, that's the problem.
I can remember
Right to work my ass.
in the 80s when we were doing comedy, it was okay to crap on union. People would go on stage, not tell a joke, and go, "What? It's a union job. I don't have to make you."
I
laugh."
did a thing on Facebook the other day. I did comedy club memes. How do you things you only hear at comedy clubs? And I'm not talking heckle lines. That's not fair. But just put that anywhere. Mm-hmm. That's you only hear at a comedy club.
Bob Hope from a movie where he plays a cartoonist.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Just put that anywhere.
Yeah. Somebody drops something. And
That's going to leave a mark.
Mm-hmm.
That's a comedy club. Oh, so I stabbed him.
Mm-hmm. That's way back.
We're dating now.
Mm-hmm. And
these are all these stuff. Comics. A lot of us had one or more of these or different versions.
And she was the town prostitute.
And that was the women.
That was the women, right. Unions were incredibly strong. I can remember working in television, and there was a time when you could not move a chair
Right.
in a studio. If somebody moved a chair, production would shut down. I go, what happened? That guy over there moved a chair. So
I don't know if it was that.
It was.
Tight.
Oh, yes, it was.
Right.
You weren't allowed to put your hand over the Grass Valley switcher in the control room. You weren't allowed to wave your hand over the buttons, the knobs that switch cameras back and forth.
Okay, I believe you.
In the 60s and the 50s, the unions were strong enough, and I think this is a great thing. People are going to say...
See, I don't like the feather bedding jobs. I don't like the fact that, when technology makes stuff easier, that you can't get rid of any of the people. I don't like that. I think it gives unions a bad name.
Let me tell you what used to go on in New York City. In television in the 50s and the 60s. I think it happened in the 70s, all the way up through the 80s and probably stopped in the 80s. If you had a television show, you would build a set. Nothing from that set could be used on any other television show. And after that show was done, you had to burn the set and rebuild a brand new set for the next television show. That was the power of unions. And I suspect back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, you had a lot of Greatest Generation guys who came back from the war, and they were perfectly okay with that. They totally got it. They totally understood what it means to be taken advantage of. And there's nothing wrong with a union taking advantage of.
It's funny that you bring up the fact of what happened in show business, because when we were starting to get into show business, we couldn't get jobs down in L.A. because it was all the old graybeards who had the jobs. All the writers for the comedy shows were all in their 50s, 60s, and more. And they wouldn't hire us young punks. And yet, when we got there, and we were starting to be about the same age as what they were, then they wanted all the young people. Then they wanted all the kids. No, 28, you're too old. No.
Right.
So we got caught that little gap period there. Yeah.
Well, they deserved it, our dads. They went off and fought in World War II,
That was a good war, though.
and they deserved a free ride after that, as long as they were
That's
white.
true. They lived through the
heterosexual.
Depression and
Yeah.
the war. Yeah, and willing to be filmed in black and white.
Yeah. Were they the greatest generation?
We have no idea. Everybody, oh, yeah, it was a wonderful time. I want my 50s back. No, you don't. The
Right.
food sucked. Chock full of nuts was the best coffee you could buy. No, you don't want the 50s back, especially if you're gay or a female or a minority or a farm worker or somebody who worked in a factory where, they didn't have protections. No, you don't want the 50s back. No, there's so many reasons, but people have that, sepia-toned memory of everything they saw on Father Knows Best, leaving it to Beaver.
What do we do about white men in this country? It's a problem.
Their time is over.
You say that, but
'Cause I don't care.
I'm not a white nationalist by any stretch of the imagination.
You're a Jew.
I know. But
They hate you.
Yeah.
You can't be.
that's the only thing I have in common with them.
So hating Jews. Joining white nationalists. We got something in common. That's a great joke.
But not to address the plight of white men in this country is a mistake, because they are suffering. They are addicted to opiates. Their suicide rates are up. Their poverty levels are up. Trump has tapped into something that our side is ignoring, and it's not helping us. I mean, imagine being a white male in his 40s, his 30s. How would you feel?
What, seeing all of your intelligence being chewed around the edges by the rats of minorities and women and gays? Tough.
Yeah, see, that's the problem.
Tough.
You mean that?
Tough. Deal with it.
And
Move
they
on.
are, and they
Move
are
on.
dealing with it.
Yeah, by voting for Trump?
Yeah.
That's not new. That's not new. That's always that 35% of people who are against science and are just clinging to religion. Remember clinging to religion and guns? Remember Obama saying that? That's,
Pennsylvania.
in 1956, after Senator Joe McCarthy had been censored by the Senate, after he had fallen into total disgrace and been discredited by papers and politicians and abandoned by all of his allies, he still had a 35% approval rating. That's never going to go away.
And he still does. Ann Coulter's still defending him. White men are a problem in this country.
No. White men have always been a problem in this country.
Okay, that's. I agree with you. I agree, and that's.
It's not the future.
They're not the future.
No.
Yeah, so now they're getting guns and Christianity, tattoos, and shaving their head, voting for Trump, holding tiki torches, and say you won't replace us. Can you understand? I know Obama could. Don't you think Saint Obama would know to address this issue of the disenfranchised white male?
So you think Democrats are ignoring the present, focused too much on Texas and California turning blue? Because the whole world follows California. California is the petri dish of social change. And right now, California doesn't have a single Republican in office. Not one.
Oh, yes, they do.
Couple.
McCarthy,
Kevin McCarthy.
majority leader.
Yeah. But
Minority
in
leader.
in statewide, yeah, minority.
That's ironic.
Yeah. But and a couple in
And
the Central
Devin
Valley.
Nunes is Republican.
Did he win?
I think
Nunes?
Devin Nunes won.
Oh, I thought he lost.
Really?
I thought he did. I don't know.
I don't think so. Now, you live in California,
I swear to God, it is the wave of the future, California.
so we're all going to be on fire. I have two friends who lost their homes.
Oh my God!
Terrible divorce. Really bad. Sorry.
Enforced. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to send Debbie home. We bought some face masks here because they're all out in the Bay Area.
Yeah, and you're going as Michael Jackson for
Yeah.
costume.
Beat it. Let's just beat it.
Talk to me about California. Jerry Brown is retiring.
Gavin Newsom is the new governor of California.
Tell me about Gavin Newsom, and tell me about Jerry Brown. He
Got the sense of humor of an end table.
he is the 34th and 39th governor of California.
And he's going to be the 45th.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He was governor when he was 36, and he was governor when he's 72. So he's going to be governor every 36 years. He's going to be governor when he's 108.
He's part locust.
Yeah, he'll just be a head in a jar. There's something. Yeah.
Is he the greatest California politician ever?
He's focused, and he's.
Did you ever meet him?
He's got a couple times. I'm serious. He has the sense of humor of an end table. We were on a show one time when he wasn't governor, when he between running for president. I think he still had his 800 number. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And we were on a show, Channel 5. It was election night. I think it was the midterms of 98. And we were on a show, and it was him and me and Jackie Spire.
Congresswoman Jackie Spire.
Well, I don't know if she was
Assemblywoman.
Congresswoman. Yeah.
She was Assemblywoman.
Yeah, I don't. And there was another guy, a pundit. It might have been Mervyn Field. But there was the four of us, so they would do election returns for 20 minutes, and then they do, people at the victory parties for 5 minutes, and then they come to us in the studio, and we would all comment on what was going on. And everybody got one line. And, of course, my line, I tried to come up with a joke about whatever was going on. And they kept going to Jerry Brown, and he kept trying to filibuster and just go on and on and on. And they kept going, oh, we can't do that. Finally, Jerry, we got to go. So we'll be back in another half hour. So he looks at me. He says, they won't let me talk. I said, we're just the dancing monkeys here. We're just jumping through the hoops of fire. And he looked at me and he went, you're right. We're just dancing monkeys. And he got up and he laughed.
Really?
And the director said, what did you say to him? And I said, I just said we were just dancing monkeys. What does that mean?
We're here in Manhattan. You and I met in San Francisco. You still live in San Francisco.
I do, and you still live in Manhattan.
I live in Manhattan. I've come full circle. I can't decide who I hate more, the people of San Francisco or the people of Manhattan. High rents, nobody but the rich can live here, or the very young who know they can eventually move, or the very old who can't move. Do people have to live in San Francisco or Manhattan? Is that necessary? Shouldn't we just shut down Manhattan and San Francisco? Manhattan gave us Trump. San Francisco gave us Pelosi. Isn't that what's wrong with this country? San Francisco and Manhattan? Shouldn't we just shut it down?
Yeah. No, we should nuke them. Just nuke them. It's not just Manhattan and San Francisco. This is happening all over the country. Austin is becoming prohibitively expensive. Chicago, L.A. is on the verge, only it's so spread out. There's always some room to move. But Manhattan and San Francisco, that's limited space. Oakland has become the new Brooklyn, but not even Brooklyn can maintain its Brooklynness now. So people are moving to Queens and, Staten Island. And I think it's going to happen in all the secondary cities like Kansas City and Milwaukee.
And Staten Island just went blue.
Really?
First time in decades that they have a Democrat now.
Yeah, because of the young people.
Yeah.
So I think America is changing. It's in the midst of huge changes, and I think it's going to be Detroit and Minnesota.
Coming back.
And Cincinnati.
Coming back.
Yeah.
Young people are going to move there because it's affordable.
Yeah. And because of fiber optics, Kansas City made the whole area fiber optics. I think Detroit's going to do it. So, yeah, I think that's where all the new incubators of art and big ideas are going to come.
There are no big ideas coming from Manhattan. Everybody here is rich, or the child of a rich person. Off with their heads.
Not the child of a rich person, the child of a person who owns a home. And that became rich. It's like San Francisco. All the kids of all the people who owned houses, and these were middle-class people who bought their house for $30,000 in 1974. Now that house is worth $1.4 million, and the kids are rich. But they still have, their blue-collar roots.
But they vote to protect the value of their home.
Well, there's not a lot of times that comes up. We'll see in 2020 because they're going to put Prop 13 on the ballot.
Is San Francisco creatively dead? The answer is yes.
We agree to disagree.
Is it still thriving? Is it still vital? How can it be? How can Manhattan and San Francisco have a thriving artistic community if only the rich or the children of the rich can live there?
Well, I live in the Sunset District, which is not the city of San Francisco. It's the county of San Francisco, out by the Sunset and the Richmond, out by Golden Gate Park. It's a different thing. It's a different thing. I don't know about thriving art scene.
Is there a center to San Francisco, a community? Is there a place where people gather? Is North Beach still alive, where you can sit in a bar at City Lights, read? It seems to me every time I go back to San Francisco, there are fewer and fewer places.
We lose the touch zones, yeah.
To hang out,
but
no community.
But that's true of any town. That was true of San Francisco when I moved there in 1979. Herb Caen was bemoaning the fact that all the old icons were being torched, and no.
But where do you gather?
Huh?
Where do you go?
I hang out at home. We still go out. We eat at the same 6 restaurants. That we used to. Still, I'm old.
You're not old.
Well, I don't act old. I don't have kids. You act old.
I'm old.
You are old.
I don't feel good. I'm at that age now when I'm having fewer wet dreams and more solid ones. Will Durst.
That's me.
WillDurst.com.
WillDurst.com.
And tell us what you're doing for New Year's.
We do, every New Year's, we do a little tour from the day after Christmas until the end of the first weekend of the New Year. And it's called the Big Fat Year-End Kiss-Off Comedy Show. This will be the 26th annual, and it's me and Deb and Mike and Mari Magaloni and Johnny Steele and Arthur Gauss, and we do skits and sketches and stand-up all based on the year's people and events. So go to WillDurst.com to find out more.
God bless you. Let me just hit the record button and we'll start. If you're enjoying today's show, please share it on Facebook, Twitter, StumbleUpon, Dig, Reddit. Copy and paste the link to this show and share it with all your friends via email. Spread the laughs, spread the knowledge, spread the love. Joining us from Los Angeles is the founder and treasurer of the Blue America PAC, which raises money for progressive and socialist candidates all around America. He also writes Down with Tyranny, which everybody should go to. He was filing reports from Istanbul, where he was vacationing after educating us about all the great candidates, some of whom won, some of whom were on the show because of him. Jared Golden. Looks like he might be going to Congress. I know they're doing another recount.
Not mine. He's going.
Good. And Katie Porter, you got her on our show, and we thank you for the education. In fact, Mark Savasco, the chief of staff for Ted Lieu, is doing the show today, thanks to you. And I always say, if you don't like my show, complain to Howie Klein. It's not my fault. You were in Istanbul right after the midterms. We didn't get to talk. We never did a post-mortem on the midterms.
I took off immediately after. I just needed a rest. And even though Istanbul sounds very exotic, and and like people might plan to go to Istanbul for months, it was just a last minute spur of the moment, and it really had more to do with one of my favorite hotels in the world is there. And I've been to Istanbul. I started going there when I was just a kid. I was there in 1969, and I've always loved the city, but I wasn't going to see the sights. Like I said, I've been there a dozen times. I've seen all the sights. I was really going just to rest in this great hotel that happens to be in Istanbul. But some friends of mine came as well, and one for the same reason, one because she and her son wanted to experience Istanbul. So they all wanted to run around and see all these sites. And sometimes I went with them and saw that stuff, but most of the time I was just relaxing and resting and just having a restful time, which I haven't had in certainly at all during this campaign, where I would be either writing posts or talking on the phone with members of Congress or candidates for Congress.
You were filing posts from Istanbul.
I did. But not at the kind of schedule I normally do it. So in other words, I decided instead of being like completely anal about getting something out at exactly 5, exactly 9, exactly 1, etc., I would instead just put them out whenever I felt like. But it worked out fine. I don't even know that anyone noticed, but I noticed, and I feel a lot freer now. You know what I mean? Like when you have to do something at a very specific time, you just have to do it. I mean, I was doing that schedule while I was getting stem cell replacements. I was I had these 2 big pipes, one with stem cells going out of me and the other one with stem cells coming into me, and I was blogging while that was happening. Like literally while that procedure was going on. And the whole time I was fighting, cancer for 2 years, I wasn't missing posts. I was doing them. Now, whether they're full of typos or not, I'm not sure. I never went back to read them. But even though I was on massive amounts of drugs, I was doing it anyway.
Well, let me ask you. You're a very successful record mogul and former record mogul. Were you cashing in on Trump's financial attacks on Turkey? Because ever since they wouldn't release that Christian evangelical person, he did something to their currency, and they released that evangelical, but it became cheap to visit Turkey because of Donald Trump, right?
Yes, it did, and it was very useful. That currency devaluation was very, very useful for me. All the prices were very, very, very down, especially things that a normal person would use and also a Turkish person would use. So if you just went to strictly foreign, tourist-oriented type places, all the prices have risen as much as the currency has been devalued, so you don't really get anything from it. But if you would instead going to things that the local people use, everything was about a quarter of the price. So
it's a good deal if you're an American to go visit Turkey, thanks to Trump. It's a good financial deal to go and visit Turkey. The dollar is worth a lot more lira than it used to be. So yeah, it's a great time to go. But if you're getting married and you need some documents filled out by the Saudi embassy, just bring your own bone saw. That's exactly what you don't want to do, obviously. One of my good friends came, and he's a younger person, and he had never been to Turkey or any place like that. And his mother called me and said, "Can't you go somewhere else? Mm-hmm. I'm so scared he's going to get decapitated." And I said, if he gets decapitated, it could be anywhere because he doesn't. He doesn't drive responsibly. He doesn't drink responsibly. Just tell him to listen to whatever I say, and he'll be fine. Well, how much has Erdogan changed the place? Because he is kind of a religious zealot. He is,
but yeah. In Istanbul, I didn't go outside of Istanbul this time. I've been to every part of Turkey. Literally, I've been to. I have never met a Turk who could say he's been to more places in Turkey than me. I'm sure there are many who have, but I haven't met them. Everyone who I talk to, and I start telling them all the places in Turkey I've been to, they're in shock, and they always say, "Wow, you've been to more of my country than I have." But I didn't do that this time. I was just I barely wanted to leave my hotel. I just it was just relaxation and not packing and going from one place to another. However, the people, a lot of the people who you would normally come in contact with in Istanbul are more or less middle class people. They're educated people. They're kind of secular as well, more or less. Or if they have religion, they're not fanatics about it. And those people, don't take Erdogan all that seriously, other than as a danger. The way we would take Trump seriously. We don't take him seriously for what he says. We take him seriously as a danger. So Erdogan is a religious fanatic. He would do things like go on television and say, if you have one sip of alcohol, it means you're an alcoholic and you need to be treated. So, so he's kind of an idiot.
But he's not outlawing alcohol.
He hasn't. Will he? Who knows? He is definitely changing things. Turkey is a vibrant economy, and it's a young country. Turks are really hardworking people. The first time I went to Istanbul, which was in 1969, the population was around 2.5 million. It's now something between 14 and 19 million, depending on who you talk to.
I see.
So you can imagine there's a lot of change there. In terms of politically, Erdogan is, something like Trump in a way. They have, in terms of being an authoritarian type of person who doesn't believe in democracy and thinks, what my country needs is a strong man. They both feel the same way about that.
Can you live in a place like Turkey or Hungary, which is also going through an authoritarian transformation? Can you live there and not pay attention to politics and live a life, and as long as you don't pay attention to it, you're fine?
Can you live in the United States and not pay attention to politics? It's not that much different. I mean, I don't think that Orbán and Erdogan are better than Trump. They're the same kind of thing, maybe Trump has slightly more things keeping him from doing the kind of bad things that they do, slightly more. In fact, I don't want to betray a source in any way now, because this is one of my only good sources in the White House. But I spoke to one of them today, who told me, we were talking about the troops on the border. And, how Trump was just using them as props. There was no reason to send 6,000 troops to the border and waste all that money and, disrupt these people's lives for no reason. Just his only reason was to win votes in the midterm, which failed anyway. And I was talking with this guy, and he was uncomfortable telling me what he eventually told me, which was that everyone was relieved that that's what happened, because what Trump really wants to do is start a war. Can we just start like a small war that we can win easily? I need that, by next week. Can't we do that? And they talked him into just sending the troops to the border and convinced him that was a much better way to do it, and he would be considered a hero and a great man. Everyone knows how to flatter him and how to push the right buttons, but they were scared that when he brought it up, everyone was frightened. Everyone who works there was scared.
Teddy Roosevelt called it a splendid little war. That's what he called the Spanish-American War.
I think Trump was not, he doesn't know Teddy Roosevelt or the Spanish-American War from pizza. I think he had, if anything, in mind. I don't know this, but he probably was thinking more of Grenada and, going in there and, winning a war in Grenada.
Yeah,
Reagan did.
Yeah, putting some numbers on the board. You're in Istanbul. Are you feeling optimistic while you're there about America? You must have been happy.
I'm back in Los Angeles now.
No, but when you were there, were you happy? Were you happy? Because the blue wave was like a trickle. It was kind of like... It
was like a trickle, but it's been growing ever since.
Yeah.
So, the Democrats are probably going to wind up with 38 seats, a net of 38 seats, and that's a wave. That is actually better than a trickle.
Yeah.
So I was pretty happy with it. What I wasn't as happy about, it was that it wasn't as progressive as I would have wanted it to be. I was really glad that Jared Porter won. I'm sorry, that Katie Porter won and that Jared Golden won. And, and there were other races that were important to me as well, that people didn't talk about because they weren't necessarily red to blue races.
Right.
In other words, Alexandria Ocasio is probably one of the most important new members of Congress, but that wasn't talked about because she just replaced another Democrat. Same thing in Detroit, where Rashida Tlaib replaced another Democrat. But that was a very, very important race, and one that she, at the end, she was biting her nails, and she got me to bite my nails. I was very nervous about it because, they had some, right-wing type Democrat, not really right-wing, but an establishment corrupt Democrat, let's put it like that, who certainly isn't going to be as progressive as Rashida, challenging her. At the very, very end, the other one, the head of the city council, just, said, she started a write-in campaign. And Rashida was very nervous, and she got me crazy about it, too. But there were other races like that. And in some way, I mean, when you think of some of these crappy backbenchers that the DCCC brought in, who will never, ever be heard of again. They'll never do anything. All they'll ever do is vote and have a card that says that they're a member of Congress. And they're just a waste of time. But those are the races that people are talking about because they flipped red seats blue, and that's important. But what they won't be talking about are some of these members who are going to have just an absolutely crucial role in pushing a really progressive agenda like Rashida. Now, how do I know that Rashida is going to do that? The easy question, thank you for asking. That's because she was a member of her state legislature, and that's what she was doing there. That's why we could say, Ted Lieu is so good at what he does. He was a member of his state legislature, and you could see what he did there, and you could predict what he would have done and has done in Congress. Same with
Jared Golden.
Jayapal, who just emailed me a second ago, by the way. I just see it. I haven't opened it, but it just popped up on my screen. So what I'm saying is you can tell. You can't always tell, but you can generally tell if someone was in the state legislature and they go to Congress, you can tell what they're going to be doing. Now, the DCCC goes to great lengths not to recruit people like that. They don't want people with records. They don't want people who could be, nailed down to something. And so the opponent can say, well, look at them. They were supporting Medicare for all. Something that's only popular with 70% of the people. God forbid that someone should support that. So they instead look for, flunkies from business or other areas, and
right.
There's a bunch of, so most, not all, most of the candidates that they recruited are just complete crap. It's just meaningless. There's just a number of Democrats that we netted 38 Democrats, and that's what those people are. They're not someone who you can expect much from. I already saw a whole bunch of them were signing on to this Blue Dog letter to oust Pelosi. And people who listen to you and I speaking every now and then probably know that I'm not a big fan of Pelosi's, and I wouldn't mind seeing her ousted either. But not by these people who are a bunch of corrupt right-wingers. They want to get rid of Pelosi because they don't want any kind of progressive anything going on, and they want to replace her with one of themselves. These, Wall Street-backed New Dems or Blue Dogs. So this is a really bad thing. So boom, right off the bat, you get the worst of the freshmen jump in and sign on to this letter. Only 16 people did it, but of the 16, 4 of them, so a quarter of them, are freshman Blue Dogs. Just the scum of the earth, basically.
And who are we talking? Name names. Who are we talking?
Well, Jeff Van Drew in New Jersey, who is widely, completely considered the worst Democrat in the New Jersey state legislature. He was a state senator, or he still is a state senator. And his career has been financed, at least in part, by the NRA. He's A+ from the NRA. He's their guy. And anything that's ever been good in the New Jersey legislature, and there's plenty that comes up that's good, he opposes. Mm-hmm. And he's, and he prides himself on being, bipartisan, which means basically that he has a D next to his name, and other than that, he votes for the Republicans. So he joined the Blue Dogs, and he's now a member of Congress, thanks to the DCCC, which, begged and pleaded with him to run for the last 5 years, and he wasn't going to run, but once Frank LoBiondo, the incumbent, decided he was going to retire, this guy saw it would be an easy win, and he jumped in, and it was an easy win. And the funny thing is that everyone figured he would win with 60% of the vote because the Republicans didn't even bother. They just let anybody who wanted to run, and they didn't put any money into the race. And as it turned out, the guy almost beat Van Drew anyway. So Van Drew is awful. So he was one of the signs. Another one, Anthony Brindisi in upstate New York. But the funniest one of all that I just loved, one of these guys, just a jackass, just a right-wing jackass named Ben McAdams. He's from Utah, and he signs on to this thing, and he's got all this nastiness about Pelosi and her liberal policies. He's just a total prick. And right as soon as it got released, a bunch of new votes got released also, and he's not going to win the seat. So here he is making a jackass of himself, and he's never going to get to sit in Congress anyway.
Tell me about Marcia Fudge. She's a Democrat from Ohio. She met with Pelosi. She's threatening to challenge Pelosi for Speaker. She's an African-American. Is she more liberal than Pelosi?
No, she's just a corporate hack. She's not liberal or otherwise. She's just nothing. She's
really?
Just another one of these nothings. She was the chairman briefly of the Congressional Black Caucus, and they won't even back her. It's just a sad case. She's a puppet for this creep named Seth Moulton, who's the one who's behind getting rid of Pelosi. And once he realized that they had to have some front man, and the front man has to be a woman. Mm-hmm. They dug this idiot up, and she's just a fool. I know a favorite member of Congress of mine who knows her well and has served with her for many, many years. Constantly refers to her as Marcia Sludge.
Okay, tell me about Barbara Streisand and Rob Reiner. They tweeted out all of Nancy Pelosi's accomplishments and why she should be the Speaker. You introduced me to Congressman Alan Grayson, who was on the show 2 weeks ago, and he told me that
loves her.
He loves her. He loves her. He said, "I love her."
He's been telling me that for a decade.
Well, you never loved Nancy Pelosi until recently.
I don't love Nancy Pelosi ever. I never did, and I still don't.
All right, so
she was a congresswoman at one time.
What is her accomplishment? What is her accomplishment?
No, well, I mean, I will admit she has several accomplishments, and some of them are very important as well. I'm just saying that whatever her accomplishments ever were, that's over, and she's in a new situation now, and it's time for her to say goodbye. Time to, but she needs to move on. So, and even she knows that. But she's trying to make a deal where they let her be Speaker again for 3 months. She gets her, whatever she has to get done, and then she'll retire from Congress. And I can accept that. I think that's fine if that's what the deal is.
But who's on the bench? It can't be Steny Hoyer.
Why not? He's worse than she is.
So who should be Speaker? Ted Lieu?
Well, in my mind, Ted Lieu should be Speaker, but, Ted Lieu's wife is going to shoot me if I keep saying that. I mean, Ted Lieu, hopefully he will be Speaker one day, but this isn't the time. Ted's a young guy. He's got 2 very young kids who he wants to be part of their growing up, and that you can't do that if you're Speaker. So Ted told me he just can't do it. And, there aren't that many members of Congress who are as well-liked as he is, and, that has a lot to do with him being on television a lot and being, very sharp on Twitter, and people like him.
What about Clyburn? Clyburn is number 3. What does that mean that you're number 3, James Clyburn? What does that mean? He's an African-American.
Well, number 1 would be crap. Number 2 would be urine, right?
No.
And I guess vomit. I don't know. I don't know what number.
Oh, that explains why Liz Cheney is number 3.
So as far as him being number 3, I don't know what it is. Like Pelosi is definitely number 1. Hoyer is number 2. I guess he's number 3.
Do we like James Clyburn?
No, you shouldn't. He's if you're a conservative Democrat, you might like him, but he's not very good. He's basically in order for him to get out of his seat, you've got to bring a heavy duty derrick that they use to build a building with. He shouldn't be considered. These people are ancient.
Right.
They come from a different place. They're not part of what's going on in the world now. They don't understand what the world is around them now. They base everything on things that used to be happening that aren't happening anymore. And they're in their little cocoon in DC, and whether you like them or you dislike them, whether you would like to bury them or honor them, it's time to go.
Yeah, but Bernie's that age, and
yeah, but Bernie has kept up with the world.
I know.
Unlike them. I mean, do you see like young people running around and like cheering Nancy Pelosi wherever she goes? No, but you see that for Bernie. There's a reason.
Yeah. Well, my idea that I asked you to pitch, they should vote for him to be Speaker of the House.
I think you must have asked somebody else, not me. I mean, legally it could happen, but Bernie's busy with his own thing, so he can't be Speaker of the House. He hopefully will be President of the United States. I believe they're going to announce it later in the month. And he's doing a good job at what he's doing to push the policies that he believes in. I mean, almost every single one, if not every single one, of these wretched candidates that are putting themselves forward to be president are just doing it as part of their careerism. And Bernie isn't. Bernie believes in certain policies that he's trying, and a way of an approach to where our country should go and how it should move and change. And that's why he's running, not for the reasons that all of these other fools are running. I mean, fools who haven't ever done a thing. I mean, a Kamala Harris, who I don't want to put down because she could turn out to be someone good someday, but who knows if she'll ever turn out to be someone good. So far, she hasn't been anything. Not good, not bad, not anything. And that's the same with almost all of them. And then you got these clowns like this, the Starbucks guy, and that guy worth $70 billion, whatever it is, from New York, who doesn't know if he's a Democrat or a Republican or an independent or back to being a Republican. You don't know what he is.
Yeah.
And you know he's conservative, a conservative Democrat now. But
he's against guns. He's against guns.
He is against guns. Everybody has something good about them.
Schumer used to be against guns. That was his big calling card when he was a congressman. That's why I used to like him.
Well, Schumer's big calling card when he was a congressman was, kissing Wall Street's ass.
All right, so we're nibbling around the edges. Answer my question, good sir. Who should be Speaker after Pelosi? After Pelosi, who should be Speaker?
3 months hence?
Yeah.
Do I get a chance to pick?
Yeah, I'm asking you. Who do you pick?
I pick Pramila Jayapal. She just emailed me.
But she,
I don't get a chance to pick. It's not up to me.
She wants Pelosi, right?
What?
I can't pronounce the last name. How do you pronounce it?
Jayapal, Jayapal.
Who came out in favor of Pelosi, voting for Pelosi.
She just did, and not so much because she thinks that Pelosi is the greatest thing on the earth, but the Congressional Progressive Caucus, in which she's number 3, they had a meeting and they decided that they had to they had to draw a line and make sure that everyone is aware that the opposition to Pelosi is from the right, not from the left. There's a lot of progressives in the country who would like to see Pelosi pack it in. But what they don't understand is that if we wind up with someone from this Seth Moulton coup, it's going to be really bad news.
Okay, so Randy Bryce lost, which was very disappointing.
He did.
That was very disappointing.
You can imagine how disappointing it was for me, too, having recruited him to run and gotten to be friends with him, and the person who went with me, one of the people who went with me on my trip to Istanbul, was his campaign manager, who was, had to be talked down off a ledge every few hours.
Yeah. But he is responsible for Paul Ryan retiring, Randy Bryce.
That's right. And he got to talk about, a lot of things from a working class perspective that doesn't normally get talked about. And he put that into the public consciousness in a really strong and good way. And hopefully those perspectives that he brought will be something that stays with us.
Right.
So he didn't win, and there's nothing like winning, but it wasn't like a complete waste either.
I want to ask you about Stacey Abrams and whether or not she conceded too early. She says it's not a concession, but that's like saying, I'm breaking up with you, but that doesn't mean I'm breaking up with you.
You know, no matter how many extra votes she got, Kemp could manufacture as many votes as he needs. He was the Secretary of State overseeing the election itself, and he was never going to let her win no matter what happened.
Right.
And, you know, so she gave up. She's suing to try to fix the system now. You know, like I've said before, I've known her for, not well, but I've known her for a very long time. She's a very determined and pretty brilliant woman, and she will be hearing more from Stacey Abrams. I'm absolutely certain of it.
Okay, I know you got jet lag. I'm going to let you go. But let me ask you this question about the DCCC. Since you started doing the show, you have hated the DCCC. And
yes.
You've taught me to go big or go home. In other words, you got to fight for what you believe, just like the Republicans, and ask for the moon the same way the Republicans do. Did the Democrats get the House because Nancy Pelosi and the DCCC played it safe, or because the Democrats locally, they ran locally and they came out in favor of Medicare for all and raising the minimum wage, and we had socialists running for the first time? Is that why the Democrats got the House? Or was
you have to go district by district. You can't make a general rule because in different districts they won for different reasons.
Would the wave have been bigger? Would the wave have been bigger?
Overriding reason, just one. You have to pick one reason. It's because of Trump. That's why they got the House.
But would it have been bigger? Would it have been bigger if
anti-red wave?
Would it have been bigger if Nancy Pelosi embraced the progressive agenda?
I'd like to think so.
Okay. Howie Klein is the founder and treasurer of the Blue America PAC, which raises money for progressive and now socialist candidates all around America. And you should read him every day over at Down with Tyranny. And thank you for everything, sir.
Well, thank you, too.
You have jet lag.
I do. I'm so jet lagged. You can't. I got home last night. I'm so jet lagged. You can't imagine.
I'll let you go. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye, David.
Bye.
This is the David Feldman Radio Network.
I happen to believe if America ever becomes a fascist state, it'll be because we don't teach civics in America. Most Americans don't understand how a bill becomes law. Most Americans want the president to be the most important officer in the land because that simplifies things. But democracy is messy. It's supposed to be messy. And nothing is messier than Congress. Nothing is messier than the House of Representatives because it's supposed to be messy. And Americans are supposed to understand that it's supposed to be messy, and they're also supposed to understand the mess. But they don't, so they tune it all out. And so our leaders rely on the simplicity of titillation to get our attention instead of good, solid policy. If Americans understood civics, we could put aside tribalism and start focusing on policy, on how to fix this country. Unless Americans understand civics, we will sink lower than titillation. We will want our dear leader to tell us how to think. So it's time now for Civics with Savasco. Mark Savasco is Chief of Staff for Congressman Ted Lieu, who, Howie Klein thinks, should be our next Speaker of the House instead of Nancy Pelosi. Welcome back to the show, Mark Savasco.
Great to be here, David. Thank you.
I want to teach civics. I want you to teach me civics. I want you to teach me how Congress works. You're the Chief of Staff. I'm pretty sure Congressman Ted Lieu, I don't think I'm speaking out of school here, I'm sure he would say that you know more about how Congress works than he does because you're supposed to know more than he does. The Speaker, when does Nancy Pelosi first put her speakership to a vote? There are 2 votes coming up. When is the first vote?
Yeah, so we're going to have a vote next week, next Wednesday, November 28th, in the Democratic caucus, where all of the Democrats who were elected to represent districts across the country for the 116th Congress will vote on the Speaker. And then there'll be another election, which will happen when the new Congress is formed on January 3rd, and that'll be the one on the House floor, where the entire Congress is there, the Democrats and the Republicans.
Now, when you say 116th Congress, Why is it the 116th Congress? How do you get that number?
We've had 116 Congresses since the nation was founded. Each Congress lasts for 2 years. And so it's essentially an election term for the House in particular. We obviously, senators have 6-year terms, so they are elected for 3 Congresses. But that's generally where it comes from, yeah.
Now, when you say Democratic caucus, what is a caucus? I always hear about all these caucuses, the Freedom Caucus. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's a good question. I could see how it could be. It could certainly be confusing unless you're following it. Even for folks who do follow it, it can be confusing. So basically, a caucus, in the simplest terms, a caucus is just a way of organizing members in a representative body or an elected body. So technically speaking, our party structures, when it's just the members who are elected to Congress, they make up a caucus. And there are big caucuses, big powerful caucuses, like the Congressional Black Caucus or the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, New Dems, the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And then there are literally hundreds upon hundreds of other caucuses. I can just think Congressman Liu is a member of the Cystic Fibrosis Caucus, the Battery Energy Storage Caucus, the Bipartisan Campaign Finance Reform Caucus. There is almost a caucus for every cause out there. They're not all created equal, obviously. Many of them are just created nominally to sort of show support. It's kind of like having, if there's an issue that's a little bit broader than just having one bill or one letter or something like that, and you want to show a sort of coalition of people who support something, you might create a caucus.
There's a Cystic Fibrosis Caucus. Is there somebody who is in charge of that caucus? And what would the title be? Chairman of the caucus?
Correct. Yeah, there would be a chairman. Sometimes for most caucuses, especially like healthcare-related caucuses, you'll have co-chairs. So you'll try to get a chair from each party to try to show that it's a bipartisan caucus.
But not all caucuses are bipartisan.
No, that's correct. Yes, some caucuses are strictly one party or the other, like the Freedom Caucus.
The Democratic Caucus is not bipartisan. What was it? The Freedom Caucus is not bipartisan. And
that's right.
Is it always a congressperson who is the chairman and co-chair person, man, woman of the caucus? Can't be anybody else, right?
I believe that's right by the rules. Certainly by convention, I've never seen otherwise.
And do they reach over to the Senate? Can there be a caucus that's both in the House and the Senate, or are they separate?
Yeah, there are sometimes bicameral caucuses.
What does bicameral mean?
So bicameral just indicates that I'm including both the House and the Senate.
Congress is comprised of 2 houses.
That's right.
The House and the Senate. So you have the Cystic Fibrosis Caucus, and I'm not trivializing cystic fibrosis.
No,
it's a very serious issue, but it's not one that you hear a lot about. And you intimated that there are some nominal caucuses where they exist in name only.
Correct. Yeah, for the most part. And again, so you may have a chairman that is, for whatever reason, either personally impacted by something or it has a strong connection to the district. They might find someone on the other side of the aisle that has a similar interest. They'll connect, they'll create a caucus. Maybe they'll do a letter once a year to the Appropriations Committee to fight for funding for whatever particular issue it is. Almost every country has a Friends of caucus, right? So there's like a Friends of Japan caucus and a Friends of, the Czech Republic caucus. And, lots of members of the foreign affairs committees tend to join these, and they just look out for the interests of whatever the cause is that it's been organized.
Now, that's kind of dangerous because foreign lobbyists, as we learned from the Manafort trial, have to be registered. It's illegal to accept money from foreign governments, I believe.
That's right.
So who's orchestrating these foreign caucuses? And if you trace the money, where does it go?
There's no real money involved with the caucuses. Usually, most of the small ones are just run out of particular member's office. So in other words, any staff time or resources would be used, would come from that member office. Some of the bigger caucuses, like Ted is, as an Asian American, he is a member of the Congressional Asian American Pacific Islander Caucus. They actually charge dues, or the CBC, the Black Caucus, or the CHC, they'll have some dues. So a small portion of we call it our MRA, but it's Members Representational Allowance. It's basically our budget. A small portion of that will come out and will go towards the caucus, who can then maybe hire a full-time staffer or 2 to just manage caucus business.
But there are no offices.
Correct. No, there are no offices, almost exclusively run out of members' offices. And we are, when it comes to those caucuses, like you mentioned, that are, organized maybe for a different country or something like that, we're subject to all the same rules that apply to, every member of Congress or every, frankly, employee of the federal government. FARA applies. You can't accept gifts.
What is FARA?
It's the foreign agents. Something.
It's what
governs the right.
Manafort got into trouble. Most foreign lobbyists are not registered. They just don't care about FARA.
Yeah, it is. It's a topic we could do a whole separate podcast on. There's actually a lot of effort to reform the way we do FARA. A lot of it in response to Manafort, but actually as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, it is actually something that has come up for our new once the Democrats take over in January. It may be something we address. So
when you say in order to be in the caucus you have to pay dues, where does that money come from? It doesn't come out of the congressperson's salary, right? It comes out of their operating budget?
From our operating budget, correct. So member salaries are actually not included in what's called the MRA, the Members Representational Allowance. The MRA is essentially the office budget. So as the chief of staff, I manage the MRA. There's kind of a complicated formula to determine how much money each office gets. Some of it depends on what the transportation costs are for how far away, in other words, you are. So the member from Alaska may get a bit more because it's more expensive for him to go home than, say, representative from Maryland. But in general, they're all relatively close to each other. The only thing that doesn't come out of that is member of Congress salaries. They have a straight up salary.
So when you join a caucus, it comes out of your operating budget or the MRA.
If it requires it. Again, the vast majority of caucuses there is no budget. There's no cost associated with them. Most of them is just, again, a nominal thing. But some of the big ones. Yeah.
Okay. So the Democratic caucus would be the caucus for the Democratic Party within that House of Representatives. Is it bicameral?
No, I don't believe so. The people that will elect Nancy Pelosi or the speaker, or our leadership, I should say, of the caucus, those are House members. So that's a House caucus.
And who's in charge of the Democratic caucus? Who's the chairman?
So right now, the chairman of the caucus is Congressman Joe Crowley.
Not anymore.
Well, that's right. So technically, Joe Crowley's term doesn't end until January 2nd. So he is still the chair.
That is an amazing defeat.
Yeah.
Cortez. AOC, is that her nickname?
AOC, it's an easier way to say it, so you don't butcher it.
I didn't realize this. Let me just get this straight. You're telling me that AOC,
Alexandria
Ocasio-Cortez,
yeah, right.
We're going to call her AOC. She defeated Joe Crowley, a tool of Wall Street. That's not fair for me to say that in front of you, but he is. Howie Klein loathed Crowley. A socialist defeated Crowley. That's huge.
Yeah.
So if you're so I don't want to put you on the spot there. You're head of the Democratic caucus. Do you disperse money?
There's caucus staff.
Can you give money to candidates?
No. So I think what you're starting to cross a line that most people, it's a very common mistake. The Democratic Party, like the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, that is not government run, right? That gets no federal funds except maybe nominal sort of security funding and other things during conventions. But that is a privately funded organization that exists and organizes itself as a political party. Mr. Perez is the head of the DNC.
Right.
That is the political arm of the Democratic Party. When we talk about the caucus within the Congress, it is simply the way that the elected Democratic members of Congress organize themselves within the Congress. So no, there's no money other than just to pay for some staff. I think there's maybe half a dozen staffers that work for each of the caucuses.
But so what is the power that Crowley had as chairman of that caucus?
There is a significant amount of power in providing the leadership for how the caucus organizes itself and getting to make rulings, frankly, when there are disagreements on how we're going to organize ourselves. So the very first election that will take place on the 28th is to replace Joe Crowley. And the new caucus chair will then run the proceedings for the rest of the elections that will take place, the rest of our leadership elections that will take place on the 28th and probably go into the 29th if they're contentious. So
those would be the leadership elections to nominate a speaker to present to the full Congress.
That's right.
But if the caucus votes for Steny Hoyer for majority leader, That's the final vote, right?
That's right.
That's it.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, Speaker is the only one that we have the floor vote for.
And there'll only be a floor vote for Speaker, and that will be the only floor vote that takes place in January?
Well, no, we'll have many other, obviously, but in terms of leadership elections on that first day, I believe so. I'm trying to recall back to last Congress. I think that's right. Yeah.
The full House meets in January.
Yes.
To vote for the Speaker. Has it ever been turbulent? Do people get up and speak about the Speaker and who should be the Speaker? And are there debates? Or is it just a series of votes till they find a Speaker?
I'm sure an historian could do a more accurate job than I could in sort of walking you through historically if there have ever been really contentious. I'm sure there certainly have been close ones throughout history. In the nearly 15 years I've been on Capitol Hill, we haven't had one that the outcome wasn't already well known beforehand. Members are not supposed to give speeches. They do sometimes. It's a roll call vote, which means each member needs to verbally sort of announce how they're voting. And sometimes people will say something like, they'll give a little stump speech. They'll stand up and say, I'm voting for Nancy Pelosi because we need to protect people's health care and work on green jobs. And, they'll sort of give their sort of litany of things or a list of the things that Nancy sort of has run on or what the Democrats sort of stand for. And you had it on the other side, too. People will stand up and say, I'm voting for Paul Ryan because we need to protect our borders and cut taxes for Americans everywhere, things like that. But in general, they're not really speeches. They're just sort of going through the roll call vote.
A week from this Wednesday, there will be a vote in the Democratic caucus, and I would assume Steny Hoyer would be running for what title? Majority Leader, which...
That's right.
Then behind him...
There's a whip. Jim Clyburn, I believe, is the only candidate for whip now. Diana DeGette had been running, but I heard today, actually, that she was going to drop out of that race. So I think it's just Clyburn for the third spot. And those are generally the three. Speaker, Majority Leader, Whip are the three most powerful positions, for the majority when they're in control of the House.
I always thought the Majority Leader becomes Speaker. Did they create a new position in the Democratic caucus?
Yes. So that's a good observation. We have over the course of the last couple of Congresses created some new leadership positions, some sort of more junior positions, the idea being to include more people in the process, give more people an opportunity to serve in that capacity.
Nancy Pelosi, during the lame duck session of Congress, she's the minority leader right now.
That's right. Yep.
So Steny Hoyer can't be the minority leader. What is Steny Hoyer's title?
Steny Hoyer is the whip. He is the minority whip.
And what's Clyburn?
Assistant minority leader. So you've got Pelosi as the minority leader, Steny is the whip, and he's the assistant minority leader. So we sort of created that third position to keep the three-person bench, if you will, sort of fresh so they can move into those three positions when we're in the majority. There's also a handful of other positions that relevant, including the caucus chair, which we mentioned. You've got something called the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, which is a relatively new, within the last two Congresses, a position. There's actually three co-chairs of that. And actually, Ted Lieu is running for one of those positions this term.
I see. And it's called the whip. Why?
He's in charge of whipping the votes, basically a position that is supposed to go around to their colleagues. And there's usually a lot of assistant whips. Ted actually served as an assistant whip in this Congress under Mr. Hoyer. And they're vote counters, right? They need to go out, talk to their colleagues either on the floor or beforehand and find out where they stand on a particular position and report back to the whip's office. And they sort of do the vote counting from there, find out who stands where on different issues. And when you're in the majority, that becomes incredibly important because you don't want to bring things to the floor that is not going to have the support of your caucus. Yeah.
Dick Cheney's horrible, disgusting, repulsive offspring, Liz Cheney, is a Congress. Is it Congress homunculus? I think from Wyoming. Is it?
I'll defer to your characterization.
This is somebody who stood by her father throughout the Iraq War and then betrayed her sister Mary and came out against same-sex marriage. She's the number 3 with the Republican Party caucus in the House, right? So she would be the whip?
I think that's right. Yeah, I think she'd be the whip, yeah.
Assuming Nancy Pelosi becomes Speaker.
Yeah.
Is Marcia Fudge from Ohio the Democrat who may or may not challenge her, is she going to be punished? Do you get punished for questioning whether or not somebody should be elected Speaker?
I mean, I guess it depends what you mean by punished. You certainly wouldn't be on the Speaker's good side. So, to the extent that if you want to get things done for yourself and your district when you're in the majority, it's probably a good idea to have a speaker that's sympathetic when you come to them and say, hey, I really need this provision in this bill because it'll help XYZ constituency of mine, or just I have a personal belief that this is the right way to do this, and therefore I'd really like to push for what have you. In that case, yeah, I could imagine a scenario where maybe the speaker wouldn't be as open to hearing from someone who openly challenged them. Although, worth noting, nobody has declared that they are running for speaker other than Nancy Pelosi. Right. So, it's hard to compare. As I've said to several people I've had conversations with over the last couple of weeks about leadership stuff, you can't beat somebody with nobody. The guys who don't want, and they are all guys, who sent this letter, who don't want Nancy Pelosi to be the speaker, need to tell me who they're offering instead. And I don't think it's fair to ask members of the caucus and members of the party to decide between Nancy and nobody. You've got to offer somebody. So let's see who they're offering. But I think, at least certainly from Mr. Liu's perspective, Nancy Pelosi is the most qualified person for the job right now. So
freshman orientation was last week.
Yes.
The new wave of new Congress people come in. They're shown their offices. Is it Nancy Pelosi who's welcoming them?
Nancy, it was certainly among the folks welcoming them. I think most of the current members were very happy to see their new colleagues, their members-elect arrive. Although I should correct one thing. They haven't seen their new offices yet because the old folks haven't moved out yet. Right. So all that sort of happens in December after we break. But I wasn't involved in the their actual orientation where the members are sitting down and sort of getting these briefings and other things. But I did have the opportunity to attend a couple events with a number of the freshman members, mostly social things sort of after hours with Congressman Liu. And I can tell you there's a real palpable energy that comes from this class. I mean, this is a really young, really diverse, really energetic class, the largest one since Watergate. People forget we're going to net about
the largest freshman class of Democrats since Watergate.
That's right. We're going to net about 37 or, I think it's 37 now. It could be as, many as 39, 40 seats before all is said and done. They're still counting votes. But the actual size of the class is going to be close to 60 members because remember, there's a lot of retirees from Democratic districts that easily reelected Democrats. So the actual new blood is about 60 members of Congress, which is impressive. And if you add to that about 30 Republican freshmen, high 20s, I think it was, you're talking about nearly 90 brand new faces out of 435. It's almost a quarter of the caucus will be brand new. It really was a wave election and sort of a monumental shift in just generationally for the House. So it'll be really, it was exciting. It was exciting being with them. Their energy was contagious. A lot of them had never really met each other before, but they followed each other's campaigns from kind of afar and watching them kind of get together for the first time and take selfies with each other. It reminded me more of like a class reunion, maybe even a class orientation, a freshman year of college kind of feel to it. A lot of hope, a lot of optimism. So it's exciting and it's contagious. And I think a lot of the current members really felt that. And after 8 years in the wilderness, a lot of Democrats are pretty excited about what we can start doing in January.
Okay. Is this a fair assessment of the process? My understanding of Hillary Clinton and Al Franken when they went to the Senate was, okay, you're superstars. Hillary, you're a former first lady. Al, you're a very respected comedy writer and radio host and best-selling author. Keep your head down. Shut up, listen, and learn. Do not get any attention for your first term. And as I recall, Al and Hillary laid really low the first couple of years in the Senate. My understanding of somebody like Ted Cruz is he's been marginalized by McConnell, Republican leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, and Ted Cruz is the firebrand Republican senator out of Texas. He talks a big game, Ted Cruz, and he can filibuster all he wants, but he's loathed by everybody in the Senate. He's not that important in terms of getting things passed. Is that a fair assessment? And so somebody like AOC in the House, I would assume that we're not going to hear a lot from her in the first 2 years. She's going to learn to play ball or end up like Anthony Weiner, who has to, rant and rave in front of C-SPAN to get attention.
A couple thoughts. One is, I do think there is a difference between the House and the Senate in terms of decorum and the hierarchy and sort of the structure of the way the place works. I think the Senate is a bit more traditional in that way, a bit stodgier, if you will. I mean, it is kind of the good old boys, kind of club where people do respect sort of waiting your turn, standing in line, learning. And part of that is like the allure of it's designed that way, right? It's the longer terms. It's the upper house, right? It's the House of Lords in our sort of system, if you will. The House certainly has that kind of an element too, and I don't want to discount it and make the House sound like it's just sort of a crazy party all the time. But I think there is a bit more leeway in the House for just the different personalities that exist in what is an incredibly diverse country. So diverse geographically, diverse ethnically, diverse with regard to religion or sexual orientation. And so it's also diverse in terms of personality. There are members of Congress who have served for 18 terms that you could bump into at a grocery store and you wouldn't know their name. There's other people like Alexandria who's not even sworn in yet, and she's a phenom and is somebody that is recognizable, at least in the world of politics, all over the country. So for better or worse, right? I mean, it remains to be seen. Her career and how it plays out remains to be seen as to whether or not that's a detriment to her. And she certainly will have a lot to learn. I'm sure she'd be the first person to admit, it's going to be like drinking from a fire hose for those probably the whole first term. I mean, it's a big job. And, look, it's one of the arguments against, I know this isn't necessarily a popular view, and I'm obviously biased because it impacts my own personal job security, but it is one of the arguments against term limits,
right?
Which is that if you force these members out after however many years, let's say it's a decade, one could certainly make the argument that it takes 5 or 6 years to figure out how Washington works, maybe longer. I mean, I've been here almost 13 years. I learn something new every week, maybe every day. And so if you take the elected members of Congress out of that process by recycling them every 10 years or every 8 years or whatever you want these term limits to be, the real power then goes to who? It goes to staff like me, or it goes to lobbyists. Mostly. Yeah, it goes to K Street. It goes to unelected bureaucrats in the executive branch. Yeah. And so there's something to be said that if a community wants to continue to send a John Lewis to Congress over and over and over again until he's been there for 30, 40 years, or Nancy Pelosi or whoever, that they should be allowed to do that and entitled to do that. So it levels the playing field a little bit. So
that's what happened in Sacramento. They voted in term limits, and it was the lobbyists in California who were supposedly teaching. Everybody had a drafting the bills, explaining to them how everything works. And just even in the time that I've been on the Hill, I've seen an amazing loss in institutional knowledge from some of these old stalwart kind of members who were here from, John Dingell and Barney Frank and David Obey, and even on the other side of the aisle, frankly, even the David Dryers and people like that who just knew so much about the institution, had been around for so long. And when they go away, you lose a lot of that knowledge. Well, this has been fantastic. Can you spare 3 more minutes?
Of course, sure.
Okay.
For you, anything, Dave.
Thank you. Civics with Savasco is the greatest idea we've had, not since Tuesdays with Corey on Friday with Professor Corey Brettschneider. This is a great idea. I have one kind of policy question that isn't a civics question. I want the listeners to know how to follow Congress and what to pay attention to. So in the next 6 weeks, we should be paying attention to who's running for Speaker.
Yep, absolutely.
And what else should we be paying attention to in the run-up to the new Congress?
Well, we've got a couple of important things to take care of in this Congress, which hopefully will be somewhat non-controversial. But whenever you have a situation like we've got now where there's a lame duck Congress with a party that's going out of power, there's always a certain degree of uncertainty. In other words, what will they maybe try to get done before they lose that power? So we have a funding deadline coming up to fund the federal government on December 7th. That's an important...
Now, will that be a continuing resolution, or will that be full funding? And what is the difference between full funding and a continuing resolution?
Sure. I only laugh because it could be a somewhat long answer, but basically the short answer of it is a CR essentially keeps a continuing resolution keeps everything kind of the same level, although there are what we call anomalies to that. A new funding bill would be brand new levels for a lot of these things. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't be close to the same as they were before, but it also comes with a whole bunch of new provisions, other report language that goes in that can change the way the executive branch operates. But Donald Trump has signified that he's willing to hold that funding bill up if he doesn't get the money for his wall. It will be interesting to see what an outgoing Republican Congress does in that situation. Are they going to shut down the government in December when folks are getting ready to go home for the holidays because Donald Trump wants his wall? Or are they going to just pass something and put it on his desk? Would he veto it? These are the things that I have to think about when trying to make holiday plans with my family. So.
Okay, I'm really excited about this because the next time I talk with you, I want to talk about committee chairmen, how that's figured out.
Sure.
And then I'd like to talk to you about the budgetary process, which is really complicated, but Congress controls the purse strings. So if we don't pay attention to the budgetary process that's coming out of the House of Representatives, we're not really understanding how government works.
That's exactly right. Before I worked for TED, before I worked for the Obama administration, I spent 8 years working for House Appropriator. So I can teach your listeners the difference between the budget and the appropriations process, which it sounds like they would be the same thing, but they're actually very different.
I'm so honored that you're taking the time to do this. One question that I want to ask you about, and that involves the agenda. We're no longer doing civics with Savasco. This is now punditry, opining, talking about the future. I don't think Pelosi can or should work with the Republicans. I don't trust Trump on infrastructure. I don't. I don't think they should do anything with Trump other than investigating him. They should just be blocking everything he does. I think it's impossible for her to get any legislation passed, but I do find one avenue of bipartisanship. The Justice Department has tried to block the AT&T Time Warner merger. Trump's Justice Department is trying to block the AT&T Time Warner merger. The judge said, go ahead, you can have it. And now the Trump Justice Department is appealing the ruling. They're still trying to block the merger of AT&T and Time Warner. Congressman Adam Schiff, am I pronouncing that properly?
Schiff. Just Schiff with two. Oh, I see. Yeah.
Because Trump.
Schiff.
What? Trump pronounced it a different way.
It's a slightly different way. Yes. Yeah. I see. I'm slow. Sorry, David. I was slow on the uptake there. Yeah.
He's a Democratic congressman. I guess he's going to be chairman of the Intelligence Committee.
That's right. Yeah. He
said Congress needs to examine whether Trump attempted to block AT&T's merger with Time Warner as payback to CNN. Yeah. So, shouldn't the Democrats be in favor of AT&T not merging with Time Warner no matter what, even if it is payback for CNN? Shouldn't the Democrats be against all mergers? I mean, when you look at I don't know if you saw The Economist this week, but the concentration of power in corporate America, they've just gobbled up. There's a shortage of stocks to trade on Wall Street, all merging into one big corporation. Shouldn't the Democrats be all about breaking up the monopolies and increasing competition?
Yeah. So maybe now's a good time for me to give
off.
My disclaimer. No, I should have given disclaimer at the beginning. But, for anybody listening, anything that I say that you agree with, you can attribute that to Congressman Lieu. Anything I say that's stupid or wrong or you disagree with, those are my personal views. They have nothing to do with the congressman. First of all, the president obviously should not be, regardless of whether it ends up by and large being a good outcome or what some might qualify a good outcome versus a bad outcome, the president should obviously not be dictating federal policy based on his personal whims or vendettas he's trying to exact on people. I mean, that's obviously an inappropriate abuse of his executive power. I wouldn't say that Democrats should be against any merger ever, just on principle. But I do think we need to examine, these kinds of arrangements, very carefully and their impact on consumers. I think too often they come with a lot of promises of what's going to happen. And almost always it ends up being something that sort of corners consumers in the end and doesn't end up really benefiting. So can a guy who's an egomaniac and doing things for purely personal, hate-filled reasons accidentally do something right every now and then? Sure. That doesn't mean we should allow it to become the rule, and we should investigate it, when he does it. So, and I will, first of all, be the first one to admit I am also not an expert on, on major mergers like this. I mean, this is although my favorite Republican was Teddy Roosevelt, and trust busting and protecting the environment. So as far as Republicans go, he's okay in my book. He could get elected in California's 33rd, I think.
Thank you so much. Mark Savasco is the chief of staff for Congressman Ted Lieu, who Howie Klein believes should be our next speaker. Can you stand the line, sir?
Absolutely. Thanks, David.
Thank you. If you're enjoying today's show, do me a favor and subscribe to it on iTunes, Stitcher. We have a YouTube channel. It's just audio, but some people like to listen to this show on YouTube, so subscribe to our YouTube channel. And do me a favor and give us a good review on iTunes. You'd be amazed how much that helps. Giving us a good review on iTunes moves us up. That's the way their algorithm works. So when you give us a good review on iTunes, you're really helping out. Joining us from Brooklyn is Dave Cyrus. He's back. It's been a while. We have a lot.
It has.
Yeah, we have
entirely your fault.
I know. I apologize. You, as I understand it, were busy traveling around Texas with Triumph, the insult comic dog. I saw it on Colbert. You did an excellent job. You guys rounded up Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke, so I want to hear about your travels through Texas, if it changed your mind about the Lone Star State, and I want to get your reaction to the midterms. But first, How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you for asking, David. And yes, I'm happy to talk about what Texas was like. Are you trying to avoid paying taxes on something, and that's why we have to pretend you weren't there too?
Are you saying I'm not paying my taxes on Texas? My taxes?
Great one. I'm just saying, you and I, and Triumph the dog, and everyone else involved in that. Are we allowed to say who the voice of Triumph is, or is that a secret?
I'm just trying to make this sound more important than it actually is.
So you, I, and Robert Smigel, the voice of Triumph.
I'm trying to build you up as this guy who was down in Texas. You know, you're a screenwriter and you're a roast battle champion.
Yes.
SNL.
I won my last roast battle, I mentioned.
SNL, Judd Apatow, movies, and the driving force behind Triumph, the insult comic dogs glorious crusade through Texas to track down Ted Cruz. What was that
Right.
like?
Well, mostly it was me trying to keep this one very nice black man from getting attacked outside the rally for the things we were getting him to say to Cruz. I just felt a bit of personal responsibility to make sure that, nothing happened to him, because I didn't think that they'd be violent. But, what am I going to do? Am I going to take that risk? Also, we didn't even use him, so it would have been especially. Well, we didn't really use him like what we were doing for the actual episode that it was on. So had he been murdered for that, it would have been a total waste.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas if he'd gotten the bit on the air, at least then it would have been a mixed bag.
Triumph the Incel Comic Dog on the Hulu special had an African American in South Carolina walk up to Ted Cruz and insult him, and we caught that on tape. I don't remember what the insult was, but I do know that we were forced by Triumph the Incel Comic Dog to find an African American and wire him, and then have him walk up to Ted Cruz and say what?
I think, among other things, he might have said, would you defend the Constitution at all costs, except when when Donald Trump calls it ugly on Twitter?
Yeah.
He said that many times, and the funny thing about it was we're at this Ted Cruz rally.
Well, tell the good one.
Oh, the one about when you shook Donald Trump's hand, was that technically him grabbing a pussy?
Yeah, that was a great joke.
Yeah, apparently Samantha Bee did it, so we would have been screwed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what I heard. So,
grabbing a feckless pussy.
Feckless, yes. So this is what I found interesting about the Ted Cruz rally. So we went to Ted Cruz, and it's me and this man, and we're basically sitting around waiting for the rally to end so that we can do our little ambush jokes. And I'm sitting next to a very nice woman who, she came to a Ted Cruz rally, obviously wanted to support him. And I got into a conversation with her because I am very curious because, so many of these people just seem like very nice. I'm sure they are very decent people.
You're bipartisan curious.
Well, yes.
You're bi-curious.
Lovely. Great. Way to keep it light. So, and I'm talking to her, and I'm
funny.
And I'm sort of just trying to I just honestly want to understand. I want to argue with this woman. I just want to kind of get, what is she getting out of this? And I just tried to have a conversation that felt, honest while not giving away who I am, why I'm there. And I just said the truth. I was like, I don't understand why people celebrate Trump not having this job before. Why not? I'd rather have a guy like Ted Cruz who at least knows how the job works and has spent his life dedicated to that. And she agreed with that. Mm-hmm. And, you kind of get the idea that there's the thing you seem to get a lot of is, yeah, we know what's wrong with, both Ted or Trump, but it's what we need. And what I was amazed by was the person who started the show, as it were, was someone, I didn't know who he was, but he gets the crowd beginning, and he works for Cruz. And he said something I found very interesting.
This was the African-American minister.
No, actually, he was just an African-American. You're just assuming he was a minister because he's a Republican. He actually was not a minister, David. Okay. He was just an African-American who works for the Ted Cruz campaign.
Oh, okay.
Who we are assuming it must be in the clergy, because how else could he love Donald Trump and Ted Cruz and be a black man and be used to speaking in front of crowds? Okay. It's just an assumption. So this man who we looked into it was not a minister. He was saying something. He goes, "Well, now we know how we don't like how Trump tweets, and we don't like some of the things he says. We know that they're not right, but don't they feel good?" And he says, it's straight, no chaser. So a man in front of this Christian conservative crowd is making an analogy in two different ways of Donald Trump being like alcoholism. Something is wrong, but you do it anyway because it feels good. And on top of that, he used a direct, straight, no chaser reference to drinking. So he is directly correlating liking Donald Trump with drinking alcohol, and that is an extremely accurate description of what it seems to do to them. And the fact that they're applauding the idea of, yes, we know it's wrong, but it feels good, because that's what Christianity is all about, isn't it? doing the things that feel physically good rather than are morally correct. And I found it very interesting how this is the argument this is what they have to tell themselves. They have to find these little ways of excusing these thoughts that they know are creeping into everyone because it's so obvious that this is wrong. What we're doing is wrong. What we're supporting is wrong. And they just kind of talk themselves through it.
Texas.
And it's just like how when we made fun of Ted Cruz, all these people who went to a Ted Cruz rally seem to agree with our insults.
Yeah.
They just want to win.
Yeah. Texas Governor Rick Perry.
Yes, the man who likes to go jogging with a pistol in his shorts. Go on.
Well, or maybe he's happy to see you, Dave Cyrus, because I've always maintained that he's a closet case.
Well, that would mean he shot that wolf with his penis, so go on.
There are rumors about the former governor of Texas, and now our energy secretary, Rick Perry.
Rumors?
There were rumors about him and his chef. There's something a little...
David, you are becoming a little bit too synonymous with who's secretly gay on your show. It's becoming a little bit too of a main vein of your show. Which Republican is secretly gay?
Well, I think they're all gay.
I know.
But Rick Perry, and there are rumors, people are saying, not me, people are saying...
People that you interview, go on.
That Rick Perry is not so much a closet case, and he's out there in the open. But
like Lindsey Graham?
Lindsey Graham's gay?
Well, I mean, you've told me that Lindsey is basically openly gay in Washington. You skipped right over the accusation and said that he is an openly gay man.
Yes, Lindsey Graham is a gay man. Rick Perry compared homosexuality, the governor of Texas. I'm sorry, he's the former governor. Now they have a new governor named Abbott. Greg Abbott.
That's nice.
Oh, yeah, old people. That's my Lou Costello imitation.
It's before my time, but I was a big fan. I was a big fan of Abbott and Costello, actually.
That's Rick Perry blowing a guy. Rick Perry compared homosexuality to alcoholism. You have to resist the temptation.
So he's 100% gay then. Yeah. Never. Yeah. I didn't hear that quote. Yes, that is a man who loves the taste of a penis. There is no way somebody goes to that length and says that, because I mean, you can always. I mean, that's the easiest way to out a closeted homophobe, because they think that everyone else has the same urges as them. They're just stronger. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with what's something called the Catholic militant.
No.
The Catholic militant is this new may be the wrong word, but there's a growing sort of undercurrent of ultra-conservative Catholic churches that want to take back who Catholicism, used to be before. Because I think you'd agree, in the modern day, I think Jews think of Catholics as our closest allies in Christianity. You know what I mean? Like, I think Jews often see Catholics as the Christians who get it in terms of us, whereas evangelicals we find a little bit scarier, a little bit more alien to us.
Yeah, Catholics were Jews at one time. They were Jews at one time.
But for the most part, culturally, Catholics and Jews, my growing up, tended to get along. They grew up in the same kind of areas, Italians and Irish and Jews often, But anyway, so there's a lot of people who are trying to fight against it's called Church Militant. Church Militant is this site that is run by another one of these ex-gay guys who thinks that he cured himself and now wants to punish everyone who didn't. And, of course, they're very vocally in favor of Donald Trump. People often call them the Catholic alt-right. And it's just amazing because you're reading about these people who want, they want to go back to the days of, these are the people who are literally saying, are you going to wait until you're the one bent over? They're making like anal rape jokes, not jokes, but like allusions to get people to hate gays. Now, you're going to wait till you're the one who's bent over with the LGBTQ's boot on your neck. I mean, they are trying so hard to stoke fear. And it's just amazing to read about this. And then you just inevitably get to the part where, and you used to be gay. Of course you used to be gay.
No, not used to be.
Oh, yes. I mean, quote unquote used to be. And it's like we're finding out that all the really horrible things that have been done to gay people so many times it's someone who is themselves gay but internalized the hatred they got from the outside world until they felt the need to be worse than anyone to prove who they are.
Yeah.
And the guy who killed Matthew Shepard was a guy who had sex with men.
Yeah.
And he needed to kill someone because he was so ashamed because of, what we, teach people about being gay. Anyway, it just, like I said, the second you said that about Rick Perry, I no longer think you're being, another gay panic episode. Because, anyone who says that deserves to be called gay.
Well,
honestly.
As long as we're talking about Republicans, researchers may have found the answer to wombat poop.
Go on.
I bring this up because wombat is a great comedy word, and you're a great comedy writer, and poop is a great comedy word, and you write for Triumph the Incel Comic Dog.
That's right.
And he likes to poop on people. So
that's right.
I figured I'd ask you about wombat poop.
Believe it or not, that's not one of the stories I've been keeping up with. And I read a lot of news.
You don't care. You don't care about wombat poop.
I don't care why it's cube shaped.
It's cube shaped.
I mean, if there was some sort of environmental aspect to this, I might care. But yeah, wombats have poop that's kind of shaped like a square.
Not kind of shaped like and it's not a square, it's a cube.
Right.
The Georgia Institute of Technology hired a team of scientists to study wombat poop.
Okay. And all right. I'm usually in favor of, studies. But are we sure that it's not just being, cut up by someone? I mean, is this a thing? This is a wombat problem? We want to teach the wombats
first of all, we have listeners in Australia and Tasmania who want to know why a wombat has cubed poop.
Okay.
Now, by the way, we had a meal in Texas, barbecue with some Tejana sauce, and I had poop cubed. That's another way of saying diarrhea.
Totally get it. Totally got that.
Georgia Institute of Technology has discovered why wombats have poop that is in the shape of a cube.
Okay.
You know the answer?
I don't. And I'm going to go ahead and say it's not going to be anything interesting.
It is.
Go on.
The gut biome inside the wombat is playing dice.
It's a long road, David.
You know what they're playing with the dice?
It's a good thing people listen to this to go to sleep.
What are they playing with the dice?
Craps.
Very good. By the way, this is how I fill time on the road with Dave Cyrus.
I just want to know, did you write this down?
No.
Did you scribble down dice, craps, and then a bunch of exclamation points?
No.
Okay.
I would tell you if I did.
Yeah, the thing about the van that I shared with you was, by the way, we could not have used the fact we were in Texas less. We never ate anything that was specific to Texas except for the world's biggest gas station, Buc-ee's.
Buc-ee's.
Yes. It's a gas station the size of a supermarket. It's got you've never seen a place with that much food and none of it fresh in your life. It was kind of amazing. But yeah, I also still have the same bruise from trying to sleep in the back of the van. So that was fun.
Yeah. Okay, who is Tekashi 6ix9ine?
Tekashi 6ix9ine.
Who is
Tekashi 6ix9ine? He's a rapper we've spoken about before. I brought him up. He's a young man with a bunch of tattoos on his face. Looks the spitting image of one of my best friends, this girl Anna. But he has a lot of trouble with the law. He's been accused of various crimes. And he was also the guy who challenged the Bloods to come after him, and they did. And he's been beaten up publicly. And now he's been arrested for racketeering. So that's not great. And here's the thing about the racketeering charges. Racketeering, you of course know, was the RICO statutes or whatever. Those laws were created to find ways of arresting criminals who were giving orders.
Hang on for 1 second, because his name is actually Daniel Hernandez. Maybe he's from Puerto Rico.
I don't know. Maybe.
Do you want to just punch me now?
I don't know where he's from. He could very well be. I don't. But yes, Very good pun. I'm glad we figured out that Rico has a connection here.
I have never made you laugh.
No, you absolutely have. You just you dwell on the ones that don't. Of course you have.
That's what you have in common with the listeners to the show. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So yeah, Tekashi 6ix9ine. The thing is, racketeering charges were created to catch mob bosses who are, of course, having other people do their dirty work and not doing them themselves. So it was created for the purpose of not allowing a crime boss who's very good at avoiding getting his own hands dirty to still go to jail. Mm-hmm. So these are laws that were created for people much, much smarter than Tekashi 6ix9ine. And I feel like it's very important for all children alive right now to watch Tekashi spend the rest of his life in jail, because I can't think of anything more dangerous than a world where people watch someone like him just live like this and get away with it. Because
unless it's an act.
Well, even if it is an act, he's still doing these things. And it's really dangerous. People need to, and same thing with like Trump, people need to see that you can't just get away with being a brazen lunatic criminal forever, that there have to be consequences. We have to live in a world of balance. And if you're going to act like Tekashi, you should not be allowed to just stay making music forever. You can't, things have to, come to a head.
Okay. Well, is he a Crip?
No, he's just a guy who who just started shit with the Bloods for God knows why. And, he wanted to look like a tough guy, was my understanding. And just called them out. And then there's even someone tried to shoot up a studio that he had been in. And there's people wondering if that was specifically related to him. It's all very odd. The guy really does not. He's acting like someone who doesn't expect to live that long, or is just too stupid to realize how close he is to getting popped.
Well, if the Bloods are trying to kill him and he's in prison, he'll be safer, as Whitey Bulger found out.
Yeah, well, Whitey Bulger was sent to jail to die. Whitey Bulger was as set up as anyone we've ever heard of. The guy was really old, but, look, these things catch up, don't they?
Well, you're being glib about that. I was actually upset.
About Whitey Bulger's death?
Well, I don't like...
Did you know who he was, or just when you heard his name?
No, of course I knew who Whitey Bulger was. They caught him in Santa Monica. But...
My friend saw him. My friend saw him in Santa Monica a year before he was caught, and was just telling people, I saw Whitey Bulger on the pier.
I don't like vigilante justice. And I'd like to think that the federal...
Well, that's not what this was. This was a murder. This was a straight-up prison murder by someone's enemies. I mean, the man was a famous snitch for decades.
Well, they get stitches.
But somebody let him get sent to a prison he was going to get murdered in. Yeah. Somebody made a deal.
Well, you're a very successful writer. You're a screenwriter and a television writer. Bitcoin prices plunged below $5,000 on Monday.
No.
Yeah.
No. How could this happen?
Down 75% from its peak. The stock market crashed on Monday.
Well, that's,
Are you rooting for the economy to just completely implode, to embarrass Trump?
I'm not rooting for Bitcoin to die. I just kept expecting it to happen because I know, because I think a lot of these things, both with Trump and it's all about history. If you know history, you know how much these things rhyme with the past. Bitcoin is tulips. And not 100%, but as sound as Bitcoin is in terms of not getting hacked, the problem was always going to be how much psychology factored into its pricing and how erratic that would be. The stock market is going to crash, not because I want it to, but because Trump is trying to sugar high an already booming economy, and when you do that, you overheat it and things get overcorrected. It's just the way that we knew were going to happen.
You know what I say? You know why I say the stock market and the economy isn't going to crash?
Why?
I talked about this last week on my show. Iowa has the second lowest unemployment rate in America, 2.9%, right? Mm-hmm. 2.9% unemployment. That's ostensibly, that's full employment. And yet 40% of the people in Iowa can't make ends meet. That's why the economy isn't going to crash. Because the economy already crashed We just have different yardsticks.
Well, we have a system in our country right now where people don't understand, the cost of living goes up as with technology because it's not like you can actually live without a cell phone. And a cell phone is very expensive. And it's not like people, Republican politicians, are able to talk about things like refrigerators and TVs as these luxuries that prove you're not really in poverty. But that's because those are things you buy once. And cell phones cost money constantly. Internet costs money all the time. So, and you can no longer work without the ability to contact you on your cell phone. You can't really have a decent job if they can't text you.
Right.
So people are forced to live a continuously increasing quality of life cost while wages don't go up. So that's really where it's about wages don't go up that much, but what it costs to live and the growing economy does. So you're right. We have a different marker of what counts as success now because we're getting closer and closer to that world where everyone's poor except the rich, which is what I mean, you're a socialist, right? It's the reason socialism gets injected into capitalism.
Hang on.
Because otherwise you end up with one rich person and a bunch of drones.
You asked me a question about my politics. I'm looking up ISIS. Doesn't say anything about socialism. I don't know. I'm a member of ISIS. I don't know where we stand on.
At the end of the day, there is no one governmental, system that works perfectly because they always have to be changed over time because they affect the system they're in. They affect their own environment. Capitalism, in many ways, Marx was correct about capitalism, that it does lead to just a very small number of rich and a huge number of increasingly poor people unless you buttress it with democratic socialism, unless you do what people in Europe have done, people in Northern Europe especially, where they know that there are certain things you take care of and the economy balances itself out. In England, people complain that wages are very low, but that's because wages are so low because there are so few things compared to us that you have to pay for when you live in England, like, healthcare and childcare and things. So it is about finding balance. That's all that really is. Because as time goes on, there are going to be less jobs. We talk about this all the time, David. America cannot be the country that just creates ditch digging jobs to keep people busy. We need to be the country that takes care of its poor because the world is not intelligently designed. There's no guarantee that there's always going to be a job for everyone, especially as things go forward. And we're not going to survive as a country if we're shoveling coal with human beings with shovels while the rest of the country is doing it with machines, is doing it with cold fusion.
Right. So Apple, you're familiar with Apple.
I am. I have one.
Okay. Tim Cook is the CEO, and I think Apple, I don't know if it's still a $1 trillion company, but, it used to be.
They're doing okay.
They're doing okay. It used to be a $1 trillion company. I think the stock has gone down a little. Tim Cook was interviewed and asked about all the privacy problems caused by Facebook, Apple, the monopolization of big tech. And he said, generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of regulation. I'm a big believer in the free market, but we have to admit when the free market is not working, it hasn't worked here, I think it's inevitable that there will be some level of regulation. I think the Congress and the administration at some point will pass something. So he's come out in favor of being regulated.
Well, I mean, what of this size doesn't have any regulation? What exists that isn't regulated in some form that is so ubiquitous to life? I mean, I don't know the technology behind this, but the idea that the internet can be a complete Wild West does seem impossible to me.
Well, it has been. Amazon has been unregulated. They just recently started to pay sales tax,
which they always should have. That was a loophole that took a very long time for people to address. But I mean, I guess I don't believe in the concept that it was ever really possible that we could have, that's what the Silk Road was. It was the idea that can the internet be a complete Wild West, a completely lawless place? And of course it can't. It's not like...
Well, that's why you need Bitcoin for it to be a lawless place. That really is the purpose of Bitcoin.
I don't have a problem with the ability to track money. I think that I think that, you know, if you're doing something, there's a lot of horrible things people can do with untraceable money that I don't think automatically offsets the privacy issues.
Is Facebook going away? Is Facebook going away?
Yes. Facebook is declining. Facebook is no longer going to be as much a part of everyone's life as it was, yes. Things are going to fragment more. Facebook is going to stay there, but I don't think Facebook is going to be completely replaced the way MySpace was, because Facebook was so completely a replacement for MySpace, and there was no replacement for Facebook. It's just people are going different places. They're going to Instagram. They're going to Twitter. Instagram is essentially replacing Facebook, but it's replacing it in a different way, and it doesn't actually provide the same things that Facebook does. So I think we're looking at just more of a fragmentation of people's social media.
Okay. I don't think Facebook's going away. That's my prediction.
It's not going away.
I think it's going to come back stronger.
Facebook is no longer going to be a place where it's just assumed that everyone is there.
No.
Because it's not, because young people aren't using it anymore. Kids aren't using it. That means it will survive. It will be a place where people use to communicate with each other, but it is not going to remain the kind of powerhouse that it's been, because young people are not using it.
I think corporations need to go through a purifying phase, and this is a healthy...
Facebook, you're confusing the situation, though. You think Facebook is going away because of what happened with the election, and it is not.
I don't think it's
not about the election.
No, I'm talking about just in general.
But you think it's in trouble because of the election?
I think it's in trouble because it's just gotten too big too fast, and they're making mistakes. I don't think it's a force of good or a force of evil. I think it needs to be regulated.
It does.
And I think it's destroying newspapers and websites by sucking up all the digital advertising. But I don't think it's going away, and I think it's going to end up finding new streams of income other than advertising, and it'll come back stronger and more powerful than ever.
It's going to remain powerful, but in terms of what it is no longer is cool. And that means something. It's no longer a place where cool kids talk to each other. And that is not something that can just be completely ignored. It is going to decline over time because of that.
We like to think that cool kids are spending money, but, you know, it's really their grandparents who have the money, and they're the ones on Facebook.
Yeah, but they're spending the money in that they're the ones who are more susceptible to advertising, and therefore they're the ones that are being pitched to.
All right.
And they're the ones directing that money to be spent. Before
you go, tell me about your roast battle. You want another roast battle?
Yeah, I won a roast battle against the great Maddie Smith. It was one of those weird nights because it was like it was colder, so it was fairly packed, but it wasn't like the completely packed out house as usual. And what was funny was it was one of those nights where the audience weren't like rabid fans. There were people a little more passive about it. So what they really responded to were comebacks. And I think I won in 2 rounds again, simply because I had the comeback of that round. And then we did the 3rd round for fun. And then she had a comeback, which made them completely take her side, but it didn't matter. I'd already won.
All right. Who were the judges?
The judges that night. Oh, goodness. I guess they were Gino Bisconti, oddly enough. Had never seen him judge before. He's a comedian who's had a little notoriety lately.
Does he work with Aaron Berg?
Yes.
Right.
He is exactly that story, yeah.
Okay.
And he happened to be a judge that night. I think also, Yamanika Saunders, who often judges, and James Mattern, who I love. James Mattern's the best.
By the way, I watched Gavin McInnes.
And Michael Che was the other judge. And thank God he didn't feel the need to compensate for our relationship by voting against me.
Oh, did he vote against you?
No, he voted for me.
Okay.
I was afraid it would look, because we worked together, bad. But thank God he did it anyway.
I watched Gavin McInnes the other day. You
like him?
He's the founder of the Proud Boys.
What a beard on him. Go on.
If he would just stick to being an asshole, he's kind of funny. Not really, but he made me giggle a little, maybe because I laugh at Iago and Othello. But
Well, Gavin McInnes, he doesn't stick with the comedy because you would not know his name if he did. That's why he's doing this. Gavin McInnes seems to me to be one of the most obvious examples of a guy who really, really wanted attention that he wasn't going to get any other way. And he's a guy who saw, I think he looks at these Proud Boys as so goddamn easily manipulated that he can ride them like a rocket ship to being the star he always thought he should be. Just like Rush Limbaugh and Coulter. They never wanted to do this for a living. They just have no morals and needed something that would get them attention, and they found it because they weren't good enough to be a novelist or a sportscaster.
right.
Gavin McInnes is the same way with writing and comedy. He's just an angry guy who wants to watch the world burn and wants to get a bunch of dumb thugs to get together and be his sad little frat boy army. Just because he's a little charismatic in the very easy way you can be. If you don't care about nothing, man, that's all he is. The Proud Boys are nothing but skinheads with a paint job. And he sees them as an opportunity. They're just like the brown shirts. The Proud Boys, I think these people actually believe they're the brown shirts. They think that they're going to storm the Capitol building and just take over like it's Handmaid's Tale. They're a bunch of dumb frat boys who are embracing white supremacy because it dovetails with troll culture and lazy conspiracy theories.
Yeah. Hannon Aki writes for Media Matters, and he has this great story about Jeanine Pirro. You know who Jeanine Pirro is from Fox.
Oh, yeah, of course. She is the woman who is was a judge, and it's so hard to believe when you watch the way she speaks on television that this person could have possibly gone to law school or judged anyone.
And I think she also ran for office in the state of New York. I think she ran for governor or senate.
Yes, she did.
And you wonder, why do these people on Fox News toe the party line? And I worked for a guy who got very rich becoming a Republican, and I saw him make a lot of money surreptitiously from speaking engagements. So Eric Hananaki has a story over at Media Matters. Jeanine Pirro has received more than $200,000 in speaking fees from 13 Republican organizations in the past 2 years. Scott Wagner for governor in Pennsylvania. On October 10th, they paid her $35,000 to speak. She got $25,000 to speak in front of the Kern County Republican Party in California.
Now, why is that a scandal?
It's not a scandal, but it explains how Fox News works. And that's just public financing of elections. They have to report this. You have no idea what Jeanine Pirro is picking up when she's speaking for dark money, Koch brothers funded think tanks and super PACs.
Well, she's like the way you described it. She's like a lawyer for the Republican Party. Truth and accuracy and ethics mean nothing. Her job is to defend Trump and the Republican Party in whatever way she thinks of that, the way a lawyer would, the way that you divorce yourself from even being a person. You're just an instrument of defense. So, I mean, it's almost quaint that we're even acknowledging, that she takes money for speaking. That's what she is. She is a mouthpiece of the Republican Party, and she is there because in today's day and age, to be a mouthpiece for the Republican Party, all you have to do is not care about if you're telling the truth or not, and just be a breathless, emotional mess.
Yeah.
That's what you do. That's what she is. She's someone who puts on a sideshow-like performance every time someone asks her a question because that's how she feels she'll get the rubes to listen.
Yeah. Would you become a Republican for those speaking fees?
No.
A lot of people would.
No, I would not, but yeah, a lot of people would. I mean, it's not hard to make a lot of money in the Republican Party. All you have to do is not care about your dignity.
Yeah.
That's what Trump figured out.
Dave Rubin, according to Michael Brooks, Dave Rubin gets money from the Koch brothers. Louder with Crowder gets money from the Koch brothers. He's sponsored by some semi-automatic weapons maker. A lot of money to be made from the right wing. Dave Cyrus, you have a podcast. What is the name of that podcast?
It's called Blame Storming. Don't worry about it. It's out there.
Okay, Blame Storming.
But thank you.
And how do we follow you on Twitter, sir?
Dave Cyrus, Cyrus, that sort of thing. You can follow me on the Instagram or the Twitter. That's where people are going, David. That's where the world is going. And, why don't you follow my Instagram? I've been hemorrhaging views ever since someone stopped following me. So I could really use to bounce back.
Oh, who stopped following you on Instagram?
Oh, no one you know. Just a very famous person I used to hang out with all the time that is so famous that being followed by her makes is life-changing. But,
and we can't talk about that, can we?
No, we cannot, David. We cannot talk about any of that.
All right. It was a grand time having you on my show, my friend. And
thank you.
Okay. Stay on the line.
Was this going to air on a Monday?
Stay on the line for 1 second. You're enjoying today's show. Please remember to do all your Amazon shopping via the David Feldman Show website. Go to davidfeldmanshow.com, hit the Amazon banner, click on it, and then shop away. We get a small percentage of everything you purchase. I promise you, every penny we get goes towards keeping the show going. And if you're doing your Amazon shopping via the David Feldman Show website, hit the contact button. Let me know so I can thank you.
Sounds good.
Okay. Joe DeRosa joins us from Los Angeles. He's a comedian, author, musician, actor, producer, director, editor, television writer, and podcast host. I'll have to ask him what a podcast host is. He will be at the Philadelphia Punchline this Thanksgiving weekend. Go to the Punchline Philly and see Joe DeRosa this weekend. Hello, Joe. Congratulations on being asked to do my show.
David, thank you. I'm flattered. I'm happy to be here. I feel like I'm always with you in spirit, but it's nice to actually talk to you right now.
So, yes?
I was going to say, and thank you also for actually doing the interview, because I had an interview just before this today with a website, and a kid who sounded to be about 17 called me and goes, my boss gave me these questions to ask you. And one of the questions included, why did you call your album this for the people that have never heard it, including myself? Like, these really aren't this isn't really the way you help you do an interview,
The life of a stand-up. So yeah. I think we met up in Montreal, right? Right?
I've met you once somewhere, but I can't remember if it was in L.A. at a club or in Montreal.
It was at a club in Montreal in the VIP room. I'm a stripper, and you were touching. It was the champagne room. We don't need to talk about that. I think we... Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, please.
No, I think it was like at the Just for Laughs festival. I think you were you were standing backstage next to me. And
Right.
I think that was
And
it.
I remember I only met you once, and I remember being, and this is the truth. I was very excited to meet you because I was a big fan of, am a big fan, but of, when I was a younger boy, and I would watch Comedy Central, like when it first became Comedy Central. From the Comedy Channel, I'd watch all those stand-up shows, and you were always on them. But I remember your set from the A-List.
Wow,
being like one of my favorite things that I'd ever seen. So I knew who you were forever, and I saw your Comedy Central presents, and wherever you did stuff that was televised, I managed to see it, and I always really loved it. I thought it was great, and then when I moved out here, somebody mentioned your name, and I was like, oh man, I love that guy. He's so funny. And I think you were writing on, you were writing on a TV show or something. And I was just like, well, I hope to meet him one day. And then when I met you, I was very excited to finally have met you.
Wow, that really is just great acting. The way you got the words off the page. I sent you the sides, as they call it in show business, the sides last night, and for a second there, I actually believed you. But thank you for just reading that word for word, and it just felt you inhabited that character. And anyway, you're from Pennsylvania.
And next time, just at least type it next time. Type it next time. That's really lazy to send a handwritten scene.
That's very sweet of you, and I wish I could return the compliments, but I'm not a fan. So you're from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, from Pennsylvania.
You're from Pennsylvania. So this is going to be an especially horrific Thanksgiving for you, because not only are you seeing your family, but then people are crawling out of the woodwork to come see you perform at the Punchline Philly this weekend, and they're going to ask you stupid questions that were written by their bosses. Right?
I think so.
It's a nightmare. You're going back home. Why are you doing this? The audience is going to be filled with all the people who remember you, and they're envious and jealous, and they're going to ask you stupid questions like, can you make a living at this? And why did you name your album this, even though I never heard it? And anyway.
I'll be answering all those questions for them in my act, with several jokes about depression and financial issues. By the time I get off stage, all that'll be filled out for them. There'll be nothing to be jealous of.
Do you have warm memories? You're from what, Collegetown, Pennsylvania, right?
Well, I was born in Philly. I grew up in a town called Collegeville, Pennsylvania.
You used to spot Jerry Sandusky in the basement, right? So,
yeah. Well, yeah. In fact, I was his. Never mind. I'm scared anymore to make jokes about shit like that. Like, people are really getting in trouble, man. Like, I'm like, every time I'm about to make a joke like that, I'm like, you know what? I don't know.
Is Philadelphia where Bill Burr screamed at 5,000 people?
Yes, that was in Philly. I wasn't there, but I had a weird. Bill's been one of my best friends for about, 14 years or something, and so I was already excited for him when that video came out, because it was getting all these hits on the internet and people seemed to like it. But I was weirdly proud that it was in my hometown. I don't know why. There was something about it. Like his dissection of Philly was very funny. And I don't know. There's just something. I felt tied to it somehow.
My friend Ray James showed me the video. I think it was like 10 years ago. Opie and Anthony were doing some kind of show in Philadelphia, and everybody was drunk, and everybody was heckling and screaming, and the comics were. It was just like World War I. The comics, their head would pop out of the trench, and ping, and they were shot dead in the head. And then Bill Burr went up. and just berated the audience and told them what pieces of human excrement they were. And the audience was screaming back. And I think the Philadelphia audiences got off on it, right?
I think they're as proud of that moment as he is. It's an odd vibe. I love Philly. It's home. I truly do love the people of the city, but there is this odd sort of combative where you're respected for being, like, I remember when I was starting out in Philly, at the Laugh House on South Street, and I was one of the only white comics in an all black club, and I would get heckled sometimes just for being the white guy, you know, like it would be like, oh, here comes somebody and he's going to be corny. And I learned very quickly, like, the sooner you went to, you know, why don't you fuck off? You know what I mean? Like, and took that attitude, all of a sudden people liked it. They liked you.
Right.
So that was always my thing. And in fact, cut to years later, I opened, so that always was my retaliation to adversity from an audience, or my the way I would handle it, at least. And then cut to years later, I opened for Bill at Madison Square Garden, and I was so nervous that I was pacing back and forth backstage to the point where he yelled at me and was like, would you stop pacing, please? It's like, and I was like, dude, I'm sorry. I'm terrified right now. Like, I've never been this scared in my life. And I went on stage, and I was about to start, and somebody heckled me, yelled something out from the side, and I turned and I go, can you shut the fuck up and let me enjoy my 15 minutes of the coolest, you know? And then the crowd cheered, and then I was like, oh, it's doing comedy. All right. And that was fine.
How many people?
It was really like a nice security blanket for me.
How many people in the audience at Madison Square Garden?
I mean, 30,000, maybe. But you can only see. It was amazing because the person that heckled was literally as close to me as somebody could have been. Mm-hmm. It was like somebody closer to the stage. So, you know, it wasn't like it came from way, way, way in the back or something. So that helped. And then also you can only see that when he did it that time, it wasn't in the round. It was where they had a stage against the back wall. So you could only see the first couple rows. So it didn't matter. It was just like I was just like, this is just like you're at a club now. Like,
yeah.
There's 3 rows of people, and that's all I have to look at, you know. Like, and then the laughter will come magically from the darkness or whatever. But I don't. Have you ever done one of those? Like, where are you from?
My mother.
No. I was going to ask, are you from Boston? Have you ever done like Comics Come Home or those things?
No, I'm from Jersey.
Oh, you're from Jersey?
Yeah. But I would think playing,
all right.
I've played to big crowds.
Sure.
Last night I had 35 people who came to see me at a coffee shop. And I always say, what? And I was nervous, and the guy opening for me was nervous. Okay, it's 35 people. It's a lot. But, it's like swimming. If you can swim in 4 feet of water, then you can swim in 5,000 feet of water. And you can also, and you can piss, and nobody's going to notice.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. And I pissed at Madison Square Garden. Nobody noticed.
So how nervous?
Right off the side of the stage.
How nervous? How nervous were you? Once you got up there, how nervous were you?
When I first stepped on, I was extremely nervous still, and then the lady heckled me, and I went into my Philly mode, and then when the crowd cheered, I was like, oh, this is just like being back at the Laugh House.
Yeah. By the way,
and then I was totally fine after that.
Who books Madison Square Garden? Because when Louis got into his trouble, I called the booker at Madison Square Garden. I said, I'll do those gigs since he can't headline Madison Square. They don't get back to me. So
they don't. Last I heard, it's Barry Katz is booking it.
So you're from Philadelphia.
But yeah.
You're from Philadelphia. What's going to be harder for you, Thanksgiving dinner or performing for all your friends the next night?
Dinner. Dinner, absolutely. Are you that type of person too? Do you have it? Is it harder for you in a small dinner situation than it is for, in front of a big group of people?
Well, it depends.
Because I still suffer from that.
It depends who you're spending Thanksgiving with, because if you're spending it with loved ones, then you can ruin it, and it's fun.
I'm spending it with my family.
Yeah, so you can ruin it, right?
Yeah, I'll ruin it. I think just my presence will ruin it, but, we'll see.
Now,
what are you going to do?
When you say your family from Philadelphia, you're the love child of Mario Lanza and Nicky Scarfo. That must be a...
Yeah.
Are they either one of them still alive? I mean, it must be a very sad time of year. Don't you miss Mario?
I don't speak to either of them. I cut them off early in my life. But I do talk to my surrogate parents, Hall and Oates.
Hall and Oates, yes.
I'll be seeing them. I usually spend it with them. And they'll sing a song and whatever.
Do you have a big family?
No. That's actually why this is. I don't mean this to be sad, but that's actually why the holidays have gotten tougher. We had a big family, and a lot of people died over the last.
Hang on, let me continue the laughter there. Hang on. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's just so it really shifted quickly from like this fun big family party, like sort of Diane Keaton movie dynamic down to like this fucking like all in the family situation where it's just like, oh boy.
Now let me ask you, DeRosa, is that a last name? I'm kidding. Is that
is the last name?
Okay.
Yeah.
In this day and age, you can't ask for ethnicity; it's politically incorrect. But if you want to, that's a last name, right? And Joe, is that a first name? No, DeRosa. I'm gonna guess that DeRosa, and I want to be.
It's an Italian name.
Let me guess. Oh,
okay.
Did you give me the answer there?
I don't think you heard me, so I'm going to let you guess still.
Okay, let me guess, and I want to do this politically correct without a... Is that a... Are you a dumb Italian?
You guessed it. You hit it right on the head. How did you get it right out of the gate like that?
You know what I did to my kids?
It's amazing.
You know what I did to my kids? I told them that Italian dressing is pronounced Italian dressing. That it's not the same thing. It's not dressing from Italy. It has nothing to do with Italy. It goes all the way back to the Middle Ages. It's pronounced Italian. It's actually a Scottish brew. And so
funny.
From the time they were 5 until, I guess, 12, they would order Italian dressing. And they would insist.
Did anybody ever get mad?
No, and then somebody finally corrected them. But, yeah.
That's so funny.
They spent about 7 years ordering the Italian. I'll have the Italian. Yeah.
That's so fucking funny, man. Oh, my God.
Well, what's the point of having kids if you can't torture them?
Excuse me. I agree. I feel like I don't have any kids, but I feel like that'd be the whole fun of it, is to get to play jokes on them. And right. I was watching Bob Saget the other night, and he said when he was 9 and his dad would take him to a restaurant, he said his dad would open the menu and go, "All they're serving tonight is cake and cock," and they just ran out of cake. That's so funny, man.
And it's true. It's true. That's how he was raised. I'm serious. He did, like, the parents, they don't, with all the horrible things that can be done to a child, you think Bob Saget's father was worried about that joke? So you don't have kids? Is there a woman stupid enough to be with you? Are you married?
No.
Oh, you're single.
No. I'm single. I'm an almost perpetual bachelor. I have.
By the way, I apologize.
Issues.
I shouldn't have asked that question that way. A woman stupid enough to marry you. That was me.
It falls in line with the tone of everything else you said to me.
But
what do you mean?
I'm a big fan of yours. I was actually nervous talking to you.
Oh, stop it.
Okay.
That's a lie.
Oh, when you said stop it, I was jerking off. I thought you knew. Oh. You're talking about the compliment? So I can still jerk off while talking to you?
Yeah, you can still jerk off. That's fine.
Okay.
But don't,
so you're going to have a depressing Thanksgiving, huh?
No, it won't be depressing. It's just it'll be a nice time. It's just a weird thing now because, there's that shift. And my parents, particularly my mom and I, we need to, we're the type of people, like, I love my parents dearly, but my mom and I need to be on our best behavior because a fight will break out of anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't take long for us to get into an argument. So, there's a dance that needs to be done over a holiday when everybody's already stressed and everything,
Yeah. And sad.
And sad and disappointed in me. Sick that I'm even there in their sight.
Your mom and you pick fights because the only thing you can control is how you treat one another. So people tend to vent towards loved ones because they know it's really hard to sever ties with a loved one.
Feldman.
Yes.
Is
a last name.
Is, as you said, a last name,
it's
right?
A last name, yeah. What? You want to know if I'm a money-grubbing Jew?
I was going to say scheming, but yeah, I mean that's.
Yes.
But no. Honestly, though, Jewish household is not unlike an Italian household where it's.
Oh, how about this? I just made up a joke. I think I made up a joke. Hang on. What's is it Ancestry.com or 23? What is the where you send a swab?
Ancestry is the most popular one.
No, what's the one where you send like your semen and saliva, and then they hope that they never get around to testing it, so you don't get sent to prison? What's that called?
That's the Weinstein Company's website. I like to do topical humor, Dave.
There was. I think this might be a joke. I have to hang on. Something along the lines of instead of telling me all four of my grandparents are Jewish, they sent me back a refund saying you're probably going to sue us for this anyway. So to save time, here's your money back. So I would assume that means all four of my grandparents. Something along. I don't know. We'll work. Can you try that for me?
Yeah, I'll try it tonight.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I'll try it, or this weekend I'll try it.
Try it this weekend.
I'll start it with, I was talking to a Jew friend of mine. Is that a good way to start it?
Yeah. And then walk off stage, take a leak, and wait for the booze to die down.
Yeah. No, that's funny. You got a joke there. It's just, that's a funny joke. They just sent you the refund. That's really funny.
Maybe they just get to it quicker. Get to it quicker. They just send me the refund. Yeah.
I want to do stand-up shows with you. But we I feel like I never run into anybody. Every time I talk to a comedian I love, they go, where are you? Where have you been? And I go, I don't know, I'm around, but I just never see anybody.
Well, I'm in New York.
I'm
in New York.
Oh, you're in New York?
Yeah. So you're in LA.
You're in LA.
But
I'm jealous, man. I love New York.
Really? It's a shithole.
Well, I mean, you've lived in LA, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do you prefer LA to New York?
No,
what?
I just hate America.
Yeah. I'm very similar. I'd rather be in New York though, because I don't know. There's something about like, I don't know. I think when you're from the East Coast, like you just can't get it out of you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and LA is such a culture shock to it. I also have some other observations about how black people and white people dance differently. And I wanted to kill myself. I was like, am I really talking about the differences between LA and New York? Oh, Jesus.
There are no differences. They're both well. How the fires? You must be. Are you? How long did it take you to set them?
It's a lot harder than people think.
I'm sorry. I have. You know what? On my Thanksgiving Day show, I have two friends who lost their homes in Malibu, and they're coming on. I apologize. I shouldn't make that joke. That was bad. What's the air like?
A dear friend of mine lost his house too. It's brutal. It's brutal. I mean, it's a bad. Yeah.
I lost two houses in my fucking divorce. Sorry.
What was the name of the last hurricane?
I don't. There's so many. I don't know.
Like Sandy?
Well,
yeah, that was a long time ago.
Maria and Harvey and.
Let's go with Maria.
Yeah.
Let's go with Maria. You could do. Yeah, that's a bit you could do. You could go, I lost two houses in Maria. That fucking whore I married that divorced me.
I didn't say that, by the way. I didn't say that. That was Joe DeRosa. That was not said by me. So.
But there you go. It's like a good, Yeah. I think you mean the hurricane at first.
Yeah.
It unfolds. Where do you live in New York, man?
I live at 473 East 80th Street, apartment 16B. The door is usually left open while I sleep. And there's no doorman. Why do you ask?
I wanted to see if we lived in the same neighborhood, because I lived there for 10 years.
Okay.
But I lived all over the city, and I love the many neighborhoods of New York. Are you on the island, or are you out in one of the other boroughs, or?
I don't want to go into specifics, actually. I'm afraid people are dangerous and horrible.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
But
yeah, I blab about like the neighborhood I live in. I practically name the building I'm in, like on radio and stuff. I got to stop doing that.
Are you able to breathe? Are you able to breathe?
Yeah, I'm on the east side of Los Angeles, so the mostly everything took place far west, and way up north. Upstate north, meaning.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the sort of sulfur air or whatever you want to call it was blowing in, and you could smell it for a couple days.
Hello?
It was weird. Like you couldn't see. It wasn't bad enough that. Yeah, you here?
Hang on. Hello.
Hey,
are you there?
You're listening to the David Feldman radio program. You sad, pathetic hump.
Okay.
We're back with Joe DeRosa. So you were saying, I think something. All right, you know what? It wasn't a technical problem. You were boring the shit out of me. I just went, Jesus Christ.
That's fair.
And then my producer said, you got to call him back. It's not right. So.
Well, I was messaging you on Instagram to say, don't worry, I didn't die. I'm okay.
You live in East L.A.
Oh, yeah, there was a day or two. It wasn't bad enough over here that you'd have to wear masks or anything, but you could smell the sulfur in the air, and a lot of people were complaining, including myself, like your eyes would just burn for no reason, and your lips were super chapped. Like it was in the air, but it wasn't like you could see it.
Dennis Miller was on Jimmy Kimmel. You sure it wasn't that?
That's the show you worked on.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the show. Okay. I guess there's some beef, babe.
No, I love Dennis. I do. I do love him.
I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. I think he's really fucking funny still.
Yeah.
I loved that show. I loved that talk show so much. The talk
Why
show.
am I
the HBO
losing
show.
you? This is me.
I don't know.
Yeah, this is definitely me. What is going on here? Hang on.
You're listening to the David Feldman radio program. You sad, pathetic hump.
Hello.
Hey, I think I figured out what the problem is.
Okay. What was it?
Yeah, even my software is sick of me. I don't know what we were talking about. But I don't think the problem... Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just telling you how much I loved the HBO Dennis Miller show.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite shows of all time.
Yeah, I love Dennis.
Yeah.
I love Dennis. I don't agree with his politics, but hey, you've done a lot of interesting things.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of interesting things. You've written for television. You've written for Amy Schumer, Nikki Glaser. You've been on...
None of them, but thank you.
You've guest hosted The Tonight Show. You've done comedy. You're a comedy writer.
Amy wrote for me while I was dating Johnny, and I think that's where you're getting mixed up.
Oh, I see. But you've been on Crashing on HBO.
I was a consultant on that for a few weeks, but I did do TV writing. I wrote for Wet Hot American Summer, and I wrote for the Pete Holmes Show, which was a talk show he had on TBS.
Sure.
And, some other stuff here and there. I did it for a few years. And I didn't have bad experiences, but I can't say that I liked writing for television. I'm a little too much of a prick. And I get real... I don't like when people start talking down to you, and I think that seems to be a common thing in network television, or in any television, I guess. And I was never really able to handle that.
You don't like somebody who's condescending or supercilious towards you? And do you know what supercilious means?
I do.
Okay.
And I know what it means because of Seinfeld. I learned it from George, or when Frank Costanza goes, Elaine is supercilious. That's how I learned what it meant.
I was with a friend, and we were doing something, and we stopped by a television show to say hello to the writers, and it was bubbling with energy and coffee, and everybody was dressed up and looked good and smelled good, and they had offices and Xerox machines, and everybody's running around. And I said to my friend, they have everything here except self-respect.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's brutal. Did you write for many things on was that a thing you did for a long time, or did you just kind of write for a few shows?
No, I still do it. Occasionally, you can find somebody, and it's very satisfying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, the trick is to just generate product and not be emotionally attached to it. Kind of like having children. That's how I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. That is the trick. That's what Wet Hot American Summer was like. It was
such a great. My kids love that. That's so great.
They were great guys to work for. David Wayne and Michael Showalter were really great bosses, and that was an easy one for me because I was like, well, this is their vision. This is their thing they came up with 10 years ago, or whatever the hell it was, 20 years ago. And I was like, write the best stuff you can and as close to their voice as you can. And if they change it, it's because they know better. And it just made so much sense to me. Whereas sometimes when you're at another thing and you're kind of expected to be more creative in the sense of like segments and things like that, that's when it starts to get tough for me. But you're absolutely right. If you can generate without the emotional attachment, I mean that's the trick. You know?
Yeah. And a lot of times they change things just because they want their fingerprints on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Where do you write now? Who do you write for now?
Well,
or what do you write for?
Well, but let's talk about you. Rufus Bellows.
Who?
Rufus Bellows.
Who's Rufus Bellows?
Who is Rufus Bellows? You played the part of Rufus Bellows in Grand Theft Auto 5.
I thought you were telling me you wrote for Rufus Bellows. And I'm like, well, now who's this new hot shot on the scene that I got to now be intimidated by?
Grand Theft Auto 5. Who is Rufus Bellows? By the first name, Rufus, I'm going to guess pimp?
No, agent. Well, yeah. So, yeah, pimp.
Who was Rufus
You guessed
Bellows?
it right out of the gate again.
Who was Rufus Bellows?
No, yeah, he's an agent. He's a talent agent, and his only client is this meatheady, like, sort of Stallone parody action star who just got out of jail because he took a movie part so seriously that he actually killed people. And he gets released out of jail in Grand Theft Auto 5, and I'm his rep. I'm the last person that'll basically touch him in the business. And I get him this reality show where it's me trying to rebuild his career. So it was a lot of fun. That was a dream come true. I'm a big video game guy. I own several systems, and I collect, and that was pretty crazy to actually get to do a thing like that. That would have been like getting to be in, like, you know, a Star Wars movie or something like that. I was really excited.
That's interesting because, you know, like, I don't approve of video games. And I don't approve of you.
Well, yeah, that's fine.
I don't approve of anything.
That's fine.
I don't approve of anything. So 5 years ago, I'm on a flight with one of my sons, and they weren't allowed to play video games. Just Christian porn. That's all I allowed my children to see. So we were. He was. This kid was forbidden from watching or playing video games. I wouldn't allow it. Maybe I was wrong.
For what? I'm just curious. What was your reason behind that?
They had to do their schoolwork. They had to read books, and I limited their television and their food. They had one good meal every 2 days.
Okay.
And it was
all right.
Cat food.
I'm with you.
So I'm
with you on this.
I'm on a flight with one of my sons, and he opens up his computer, and he's got Grand Theft Auto. So at first, I was mad that he had it on his computer, but then I go, okay, you know, you can't create a scene on an airplane because they took my box cutters. So I have to be the father who's, all right, son, out of intellectual curiosity, let's learn about Grand Theft Auto. So he kind of showed me what Grand Theft Auto was. And within 2 seconds, I'm shouting, kill the pimp. Kill the pimp. Now the John. Run over the John. Take the hooker's cash. So is there any way to win in Grand Theft Auto? Is there a game, or are you just doing horrible things to people?
No, there's a game. It's a massive... I can't get through it. It's too long for me.
But
I mean,
is there a score? Do you keep score?
It's not a score. Those games are called... That type of video game is called a campaign, and meaning you have to work your way through a campaign and a storyline in the game. So it's not about score. It's about completing the tasks that are presented to you to get to the end of the story. But Grand Theft Auto also is what they call open world, which means you can go off of the campaign and do all these side missions and have these side experiences and just kind of live in that world. Down to like being able to go.
When you were recording Rufus Bellows, you have to record all the variables, right?
Well, No, because my stuff was all cut scenes, and not meaning they were cut, but cut scenes are the video scenes that you can't interact with in a video game that just tell a story.
Oh, I see.
So I did all my stuff were cut scenes. So I did all full motion capture, like, the suit with all the balls on it and everything. And then after that, I put on the motion capture.
You're used to having balls on your body.
We went for the same joke. I said, you said the balls, you're used to having balls on your body, and I said I put the suit on with all the balls on it, and then I put on the motion capture thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was I was so busy trying to make my own joke, I wasn't listening to you. By the way, that's what makes a great host. Never listen to the guest.
Yeah, I remember Letterman would always say that. I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. It was fun, man. No, it was full motion capture. My face is in the game, my voice is in the game.
Wow.
It's my body, technically.
Wow.
It was pretty cool, but yeah, I can't even imagine. My friend, my good friend is high up on the development team at Rockstar Games, which is the company that produces those games. And they work, it's insane. Like, I remember talking to him when they were completing that game before it came out, and it was Christmas. And I think he had to fly and work on Christmas Day. Like, it's so much content. I can't even wrap my head around it. I don't know how they even keep track of all of it.
And you play these games, right?
They do. Say again?
And you play these games, right?
I don't play the Grand Theft Auto type games as much as I play other. I do play them, but I'm more of a fan of a sort of a pick up and play game. I mean, that game takes a lot of investment. I like a little more of a Mortal Kombat situation.
Well, is that because
is
it being part of Grand Theft Auto, being in Grand Theft Auto, you've seen behind the scenes, so it's not fun for you, the same way you wouldn't like a Brazilian snuff film.
See, now that's where you're wrong. I love Brazilian snuff films because I love my work. I feel lucky. You know what I say, David? I say I'm so blessed. I get to go to work every day and play. And a lot of people can't.
Is it
no?
healthy
It's got nothing to do with being in it. It's just my taste in video games leans a little more towards the simpler things, like a fighting game, where you pick it up, you play it for a little while, you have a few fights, and then you put it down. And it's not as much like developing a character and role playing and all those things. You know what I mean?
I'm being serious here. Are there any video games where you're trying to make a woman come?
Well, I mean, there's got to be. But, do you remember? Well, you probably don't because you do. But Leisure Suit Larry, there was a big PC series in the 80s called Leisure Suit Larry.
PC as in politically correct, or just for Microsoft?
Yeah, computers. But yeah, they were. The whole thing was that you were a guy trying to get laid. Like, that was the whole game. I mean, but it was goofy and comedic. It wasn't very graphic, but.
But don't you think there should be like a video game that teaches young boys how to make a woman come?
I mean, it depends on how young they are. I mean, if you're saying 11 or 12, I'd say no. But if you mean 5 or 6, yes, let's get them learning. If you're going to do it right.
Why wouldn't there be a market for some game where you're touching all the knobs and lying to them? So is Call of Duty, is that what it's called?
Yes.
Call of Duty. Are you letting off steam? And is that good for our society? Does it make you less violent or more violent playing those games?
I mean, I got to say, the people I know that are super into those games are the least violent people I know.
And is it because of those games?
I don't know if it's because of them. I just think I just think people, the average person has the ability to separate right from wrong and understand fantasy versus not. So, I mean, it's, you could say, does playing paintball inspire violence? You know what I mean? Like, you're either nuts and you don't understand that this is just a game,
right?
Or you can handle it. I mean, that's my take on it, but I don't think it inspires. I mean, I'm a huge, huge horror movie fan on top of all this. I've never watched a horror movie and thought, I want to do that. I want to get a knife. You know what I mean? I never thought that.
Right.
Watch the movie.
But a lot of people say it's a release. I can understand that. I could see being angry and playing Grand Theft Auto and feeling better afterwards. I let off some steam.
I think it is a release, but I don't think it's because of the violence. I think just the act of playing any video game for a certain type of person is a release. So you could be playing Super Mario Brothers, it's still going to be a release, or even Pac-Man. You know what I mean? Like it's like if you like that kind of thing, it does help you unwind. I also think it's, I think they get a bad rap. I think they're extremely good for your sort of cognitive skills. Like it's very good for your hand-eye coordination. And
so is porn.
Come on. You got me.
Well,
yeah.
So I'm just thinking about Grant, because I've never played a video game. I watched this Grand Theft Auto and I thought, okay, I could see, all right, I'm in a bad mood, okay, like child molestation, right? They say that child molesters can't be cured. Like, I have to tell you that. And but do you think
beautiful?
But do you think if there were like computer simulations of child molestation, that then you could go go to the, I don't know what you would call it, conducting mass or something, but instead of, if you could go and do it on your computer, then would they allow that? And wouldn't that, if you could let off steam that way by doing it to, CGI, computer generated kids?
First of all, I've never heard of pedophilia referred to as letting off steam, which is an interesting, which is the only way I'm going to refer to it from now on.
Hey, I was just letting off steam. Come on. Come on, baby.
No, I don't think they would allow that, number one. Number two, here's the thing with video game violence. There isn't, for the most part, there's obviously exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, I think the brutality in video games is always in some way more or less justified, meaning if you play Call of Duty, you're not playing a psychopath who is killing, innocent people. You're playing a guy who's in a military troop who's fighting another group of guys that are trying to kill you. You know what I mean? I think it's like Mortal Kombat. You're a demon that rips people's heads off, but you're fighting a demon that rips people's heads off. So it's like, it's not really punching down at that point. I think for the most part, games don't feature a lot of the like just straight up depravity.
Right.
That's my guess. That's the best way I could answer that.
Yeah. Well, this
Does
was
that help?
great. I have a new friend. You're going to be.
You wrapped that up. You wrapped that up so quickly that I don't believe that I am a friend.
No.
And I believe.
No. Somebody just emailed me. I have a new friend.
Send me. Listen, man. I don't know. Well, I'm following you on Twitter now. I'm not Twitter, on Instagram. Let's message each other our info, and I'd love to see her when I'm in New York. I'd love to grab coffee or something.
Maybe we can do some stand-up together.
I would love it. Yeah. I'm going to be out there I'm headlining at Gotham the weekend after New Year's, and I'm going to be in town that whole week of New Year's.
Well,
so
let's hang out.
Let's get in touch and try to do some shows or something.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome.
All right, Joe DeRosa.
Awesome, buddy.
Joe DeRosa. What is your website called?
JoeDeRosaInfo.com.
Okay, and
my Facebook, Joe DeRosa Comedian on Facebook, which is probably the more reliable source for current information.
Go see him this Thanksgiving weekend at the Philadelphia Punchline, the Punchline Philly. Spend your Thanksgiving Day weekend with Joe DeRosa. Stay on the line for 1 second, sir.
Yes.
Thank you. If you're enjoying today's show, please share it on Facebook, Twitter, StumbleUpon, Dig, Reddit. Copy and paste the link to this show and share it with all your friends via email. Spread the laughs, spread the knowledge, spread the love. Let's go to Bayville, Long Island, where Jackie the Joke Man Martling is standing by, and you want to go see him? Of course you do. 7 p.m. Saturday, December 1st. He's at McGuire's in Bohemia on Long Island to hear endless jokes. Say, Alexa, play Jackie Martling. By the way, you have to have, the Amazon smart speaker. Otherwise, you'll just be crazy. Or go to Pandora or Spotify and type in Jackie Martling. Follow Jackie on Twitter, Jokes Daily at 4:20 p.m. International Marijuana Time at Jackie Martling. And guys, I don't know how many times I have to remind you. Use your finger. Call the Dirty Joke line. For 40 years, this man has been spewing out amazing dirty jokes. Call 516-922-WINE. Hello, Jackie. Happy Thanksgiving.
How many New York? Oh, fuck Thanksgiving.
I agree.
So a doctor's leaving for work. He says to his wife, "You're a lousy mother, you're a rotten wife, and you're a crummy lay." He comes home that night, walks in the house, and his wife is naked on the living room floor fucking his brother. He says, "What are you doing?" She says, "I'm getting a second opinion." So two nuns are on a bus, and the first nun's doing a crossword puzzle, and she says to the other nun, "Sister, what's the four-letter word for woman that ends in U-N-T?" And the other nun says, "Ant." And the first nun says, "Have you got an eraser?"
I love that joke. It's a classic.
So a guy's talking to a woman at the bar, and he says, "Man, you look really great." She says, "I'm 58 years old." He says, "You're kidding. I would have thought you're 35. I'm 58. You got to be kidding." She says, "No, I take good care of myself." So I have a few drinks. She says, "Hey, do you ever have a sportsman's double?" He's like, "I don't know what that is." Sportsman's double, mother-daughter. He says, well, no. I mean, like every guy, that's my fantasy. But no, she says, "Well, I think tonight's your lucky night. Come on, get in my car. We'll go to my place." So they get in her car, and this guy's got a hard-on like you ride home about. He's got a world-class boner. He can't believe his luck. And they go to her house, and they walk in the door, and she says, "Hey, Ma, you still awake?"
That's a great joke. That's a great joke.
Did you hear about the gay Jew?
No.
He blew. Hey, did you hear about the leper at the racetrack?
No.
He lost his ass. So what would you call a naked blonde doing a handstand?
What?
A brunette with bad breath.
Oh, come on now. Be nice, Jackie. These are good people. Be nice.
So it's 1958. It's 1958. This
Hang
female Siamese twins. You with me?
Hang on for one second.
1958.
Hang on. Let me get organized here. All right. Be nice.
So it's 1958. This female Siamese twins in Atlanta, Georgia, and they see a sign tonight, Chet Atkins. They're like, wow, he's so great. Let's go. So the Siamese twins, the girls go to the show. After the show, they finagle their way back into the green room. And they're flirting with Chet, having a few glasses of wine, and they talk him into coming back to their apartment. So they're at the apartment. Next thing you know, they're drinking wine. He's making out with both of them, and they're having a merry old time. And sooner rather than later, one of them starts sucking his cock. So the other one doesn't know what to do, so she starts playing her clarinet. Well, the first one gets done blowing him, and the second one wants to blow him, so she starts blowing him, so the first one starts playing her trombone. So then she's done. The first one's blowing him, the other one's playing the clarinet, and then the other one's blowing him, and the other one's playing the trombone. Back and forth all night, having a merry old time. And in the morning, Chet Atkins leaves. So 5 years later.
5 years later,
the girls go to the same theater and they see a sign that says, tonight, Chet Atkins. And the first one says, we should go see Chet again. And the other one says, yeah, you think he'll remember us?
Don't. Stop. Oh, that's the Aristocrats. That's part 2 of the Aristocrats. You got to call Paul Provenza and tell him that's the best. That's the Aristocrats. You think he'll remember us? Oh, good God.
So what should you do?
Hang on. You're killing me, you mother. Go ahead. Hang on. All right.
What should you do? I'm killing him, Barbara.
You know why that joke is... I'll tell you why that joke is so fucking great. That is a great fucking joke. That is so fucking amazing.
I know it.
You think he'll remember us? Go ahead.
What's the difference between a plaque and a plick?
A plaque and a what?
A plick.
A plaque and a plick. What?
A plaque hangs on a wall and a plick hangs on a Chinaman.
Be nice. Be nice.
So a sailor's in a bar in England. And he says to the girl, he has a few beers, he says to the girl, let's go out in the alleyway and get it on. She says, why should I go out there and get it on with you? He says, because I'm good, goddammit. I'll tell you 3 times to nowhere, I'm goddamn good. She says, all right, I'll give you a go, I will. They go out in the alleyway, she lifts up her dress, he starts banging her. Her head's bobbing up and down like crazy. He's banging her, and her head's bobbing up and down like crazy. They go back in the bar. He has another beer. He says, I told you I was good. She says, you weren't so hot. He said, what do you mean I wasn't so hot? She just all said, you weren't so hot. He says, well, why was your head bobbing up and down like that? She said, you were in such a rush, you had a bit of me scarf tucked in down there.
Jesus. How do you write a joke like that? How do you write a joke?
So the guy gets the husband gets terminal cancer. Terminal cancer. He can't believe it. He says to his wife, listen, after I die, you think you'll date another guy? She says, probably. She says, yeah. Will you fuck him? She says, maybe. She says, will you suck his cock? She says, maybe. Will you let him use my golf clubs? She says, oh, no, he's left-handed.
Oh, that's the best. Not as good as the Siamese twins. That's one of the all-time greats.
What would you call a guy with no arms, no legs, and a 12-inch cock?
What?
Partially handicapped.
I rang the bell, didn't I?
So Rufus says to Tevis, you know the meanest animal in the world? You know, Rufus, what's the meanest animal in the world? Well, the meanest animal in the world am a crocodile. What do you mean a crocodile? Look, I said the meanest animal in the world be a crocodile. Don't you mean a crocodile or alligator? No, I mean a crocodile. What's a crocodile? Well, a crocodile is an animal. We got the head of a crocodile at one end and the head of an alligator at the other end. Yeah, wait a minute. If it got the head of a crocodile at one end and the head of an alligator at the other end, how's he shit? He said, oh, that's why he's so mean.
Hey, Jackie the Joke Man will be at McGuire's in Bohemia on Long Island, 7 p.m. Saturday, December 1st. To hear endless jokes, say, Alexa, play Jackie Martling, or go to Pandora or Spotify and type in Jackie Martling. Follow Jackie on Twitter, Jokes Daily, at 4:20 p.m. International Marijuana Time at Jackie Martling, and use your finger. Call 516-922-WINE for a filthy joke told by Jackie Martling.
So a guy goes to the drugstore and says to a girl behind the counter, he says, I need some condoms for my 10-year-old daughter.
No.
And the girl says, your daughter's sexually active at 10 years old?
No.
He says, nah, she just lies there like a mother.
No.
So a Polish guy is on the electric chair. A Polish guy is on the
joke.
electric
Hang on for one second. That joke. That you should be.
You can take it out.
I'm not going to take it out.
So a Polish guy's on the electric chair, and he gets the hiccups. And the warden says, do you have a last wish? And the Polish guy goes, yeah. Could you do something to scare me?
I love you, Jackie. I love you.
All right, man. We'll do it again.
Happy Thanksgiving. Stay on the line for 1 second, okay? you're enjoying today's show. Please remember to do all your Amazon shopping via the David Feldman Show website. Go to davidfeldmanshow.com, hit the Amazon banner, click on it, and then shop away. We get a small percentage of everything you purchase. I promise you, every penny we get goes towards keeping the show going. And if you're doing your Amazon shopping via the David Feldman Show website, hit the contact button. Let me know so I can thank you.